Today on Off the Hinges, relax, pour yourself a drink, and unwind from your week as I answer your questions and share stories about this week's trade. I'm joined by a special guest, and I have my whiskey in hand. I'm so glad you made it. Are you ready? Let's slide into the vault. All right, man, I'm so excited for y'all. I've been waiting for this for a while. I talked to this dude quite a while ago. He rivals me as maybe one of the busiest, in the best of ways, most engaged guys. He has so much on his plate between family life, business life. He's a U.S. Marine Master Sergeant. He's got so much going on. But welcome to the weekend. Welcome back to the vault, Off the Hinges. Matt Solowynsky, ski, man, I'm going to take a sip. We are charged up with our glasses. This dude's ready to rock and roll. I'm so excited for this. But before he gives a quick introduction, general disclaimer, which I have to do when I have another active duty military member on. This is just Josh and Matt. I've known this guy for a while. I used to rock the staff NCO rocker. He's a staff NCO. So for you snipers out there, they're going to be like, oh, why is this guy using first name basis with this Master Sergeant of Marines? All right, calm down, little children. I've done this for a little bit too. And this is a good friend. That's how we do it. We chop it up that way. So that's how we roll. Nothing we say is representing the Department of Defense, the United States Marine Corps, for me, now also NATO. This has no affiliation with the military, although we're blessed that that's what crossed our paths. I love the fact that this dude is still doing his thing, but this is not associated with that. This is two brothers connecting for you, and that's it. And hopefully you find benefit from it. And this guy's got a lot to share. So while I take a sip, go ahead and introduce yourself to our guests.
Well, as you said, Matt Solowynsky. Everyone calls me Solo. He calls me Ski, so it'll be either or. Again, Marine Corps Master Sergeant. I'm joined in 05. I want to say I have like 17 months left. I forgot how to count forward. I'm on the backwards number, so.
You don't
like
have that many crayons, man. It's hard to count.
It's the same thing like when you have a kid, you count the months up until the first 2 years, and then it transitions to years. I'm on the reverse slope.
Isn't that so weird? How many months are your kid? I don't know. Like, let's just go with years. Who knows, dude?
Yeah. So, and now it makes sense to me because I'm on the reverse. I know I have like 17.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've been doing that. And I mean, again, like you said, I think we ran into each other around 2015, 2016 timeframe.
Yeah, somewhere in there. Yeah.
And then,
yep.
I mean, randomly back and forth, probably hit each other up for something work related, or I think like I was still getting like mass emails from IOLTC, and I was like, "Hey, sir, can you like take me off this because I'm in a different state?
I don't want this anymore, man."
Yeah, I was like, I don't know how to get your calendar off my calendar.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, that's me in a quick brief.
Cool. All right, so self-regulation is what we're diving into. And like he said, that's a very quick introduction. He'll share more of his story, and whatever he wants to paint that canvas with is on him. But yeah, I can't think of a better guy from just my experience with him and watching you in the cadre specifically. That was my first interaction with you guys with Scout Sniper course. And there's just so much that going through that pipeline. It is very prestigious and it is very important. All the training and things that you go through, sure. But as a cadre member, you just had such a different perspective. Also having gone through that training yourself, but then facilitating stuff like that and just watching yourself and other people struggle with how to regulate what's on the inside and sort of maybe bury and suppress that at times when it's not useful to accomplish training, accomplish a mission, whatever that is. So that's when I was going through these and we landed on this virtue and this topic. I was like, man, this is good for Matt because I just think you have a perspective that most human beings in this world don't have. And not every Scout Sniper has had the ability to be an instructor at Scout Sniper course. So even if you've gone through it, there's different experiences and exposures you get that give you a whole new lens on something that you've struggled with personally, but now you're stepping into facilitating other people struggling with this in a good way. And you might be your own master of disaster for those little assholes too, and making them struggle intentionally. So, man, it was just cool to watch you guys, and all the courses had their different skill sets, but watching y'all with the Scout Sniper course specifically that was cool, dude. I think of a lot of guys back from that cadre, whether it's you, fast forward and maybe like a year or two when I was dealing with Steve Wynn a lot, like a lot of those dudes that come from that grouping of like the 2015 to maybe like 2018, 19 timeframe, like that cadre had some rock stars, man.
Okay. A
It's
lot of giants.
really, it was, man. And I even think of like Matt Ingerson, who, yeah, he was the IULC chief, but that dude was a scout sniper. So just they're bred differently in the most awesome, raddest, scariest of ways sometimes. Like a Marine Scout sniper is just like, it lives up to the name, it lives up to the clout. And whatever you've heard or seen, like snipers ebbing and flowing and different things within divisions to maybe going more specialized and whatever. I was there for a lot of that transitional period. But you can put all that to the side and just know that when you have someone that says they're a Marine Corps trained scout sniper, you don't get more gritty and resilient and tough than that, first of all. And also just the exposure that these guys came being a cadre member there. And that's laced with some cool stories. So yeah, I'm excited for this. But before we jump into some of the questions on this, I always have a few off the top that we go with. So first of all, what are you thankful for this week?
Yeah, it's a hard one right out the gate. Now, to be honest, actually, probably say the opportunity to do this. Like we were talking about, obviously, before we turned the camera on. Life for us, I can't speak for you specifically, but for me personally, like, never stops. So I know you were like, "Hey, man, however much time you have," I was like, I was somehow able to be like, as soon as I get off work today, like the rest of the day is turned off,
Man,
just
I
for
appreciate
this.
that because
Um,
that's
yeah,
not easy.
normally, like I said, normally it's like people don't realize it. Like again, and you said we'll get into it, but like I don't stop going till maybe midnight every night because it's like, hey, I just graduated my well, graduate. I can finished my last two classes for college
Hmm.
last
Congrats.
week. So like I don't have anything. I don't have another class until May, just because
Yeah.
that's the way it worked out.
Yep.
So I'm like, sweet. Like I don't have anything. I can't be like, hey man, sorry, I got to take a statistics exam or anything. So like I only got 15 minutes.
Gross.
Yeah.
Gross. Please don't do
So
that.
yeah. So it's like I've got that's open. Yeah. I mean, I could talk about it now, but like we had the vice president of the United States of America visit the battalion last week. So like my every day, Monday through Friday, was 9:30 or later, because it was like we got to make sure everything's prepped. We got to make sure all these things are done. We got to integrate with the Secret Service, make sure we follow all the regulations.
Man,
And it was a
if
big
y'all haven't
deal.
experienced that, it is just whenever you have any big dog from a national status or any, distinguished visitor, a DV visit. Oh
Oh,
man. And now is the master sergeant there at the unit handling specifically that. I don't
yeah,
even want
and
to imagine what that was like.
it was interesting to say the least. I mean,
It's
it and again,
it's
like
such
it,
a polished response. You're so good at this.
yeah. I mean, it was there was things I didn't expect. There was things that I did expect.
Yeah.
But to that point, like that happened Wednesday.
Hmm.
Tuesday, we had three-star generals on deck.
Yeah.
We almost had the sergeant major of the Marine Corps on deck. So like it's just one of those, like I said, I was like, your teams meetings, phone calls. My colonel's
Right.
like pushing out word, super, super late at night because he's still working because he's like, man, we gotta get this right. Like this, we can't mess this
Exactly.
up. So we were
Right.
just making, dotting all the T's, crossing all the I's, or however you say that, to make sure everything was good. So like this week, it's
Yep.
like we're on like we're on the downslope of all that, and we don't got to ramp it back up for like maybe I think actually today we got hit up with like, hey, we got some VIPs coming again next week, so it's like, all right, sweet, like we'll ramp back up on Monday. Um,
Sweet.
so yeah,
It's
so that
never
was
ending, man.
so like specifically today it was cool because like I said, I mean like I told you yesterday. I was all over the place yesterday because I thought we were doing this yesterday, and I was texting you like, "Dude, I'm so sorry. I'm all over the place. I'm messing this up." And you're like, and then I was like, "Oh wait, never mind. I'm 24 hours ahead of the clock." And
You
you're
and
like,
me
"Yeah, don't worry
both,
about it."
man. You know, it's
So
weird too. Thanks for that. I'm glad that you're thankful for this because I am too. We chopped it up for Matt and I were talking for almost an hour because we don't have the time. Like we'll send each other messages or like, yo, saw that, that's great. And he'll tell you about what he's got going on in life. And even if he doesn't dive into all of it, whenever I post this, I'll tag all of the things that he does with the different adventures and ventures that he's on because he's doing a lot of good stuff. So I'm always happy to promote like a really good dude who's just doing his own thing on the side because I think that's sort of what I'm doing here too. And you need people that just support you. That's what it is. It's networking of people who you actually trust. So I'll actually absolutely drop in his stuff so you can follow along with what he's doing in his own business ventures. But yeah, man, we probably caught up for almost an hour, and then he's like, "I need to go get more coffee before we hit record because that's life, man." It's
Yep.
so I am thankful for this because I haven't had a chance to talk to you for like a solid almost hour, probably since we were stationed together. Like we haven't
Nope.
had that
And I don't
chance to
even,
just
yeah, I don't even know if we had that while we were stationed together because we were
maybe
so
not.
busy.
Probably maybe in a
But
stalk lane walking, just laughing at dudes or
yeah,
something. We
yeah,
definitely did then, but we couldn't be too loud and obnoxious. But
or at
yeah.
least I'd say at least in a non-work capacity, probably.
In a
This is
non-work
why,
capacity, I wasn't rocking a snapback. I probably, had on my 8 point or a boonie or a Kevlar or something.
yeah,
Who
we were probably
knows?
talking about some student that was about to go on a PEB or something.
Yeah. Hey, sir, we need you to sit down with this guy because he's not cutting it. So he needs to meet the man, and that was me with those guys. So there you go. Yeah, cool. All right. So what have you been learning lately?
I mean, honestly, uh, again, going to school, I reattacked that. I've been doing that off and on for the last 10 years of my career. But
Good for you, man.
business marketing, and I'm
Cool.
trying to do a concentration in like web and internet
Hmm.
specifically, obviously with social media and podcasts and all this
Yeah.
stuff. Like that's a huge piece now. Like if you're not living in that space, you're failing before you even start.
Right.
Um, so I've been trying to get into that. I've always kind of been a bit of a computer nerd. So
Hmm.
figured the internet, web technologies portion would be right up my alley. Um, I mean, then other than that, the other thing that I'm super learning is how difficult it is to retire, uh, and the massive amount of things that you have to do for that.
Because
Um,
that's set for next year for you, right? Next summer.
yep, August of next year. But it's just like I've seen so many guys that like I thought were squared away, and I take that back. That were squared away as Marines
Right.
and can do the Marine thing. Like,
Hmm.
say like, hey, that dude's squared away. He does his job. He knows his things. He can shoot. He can move. He can communicate. He can do the administrative stuff. And then it comes to like retirement, and it's like some mystical like Bermuda Triangle where everyone's like, I don't know how to do it. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, people have been doing it every day, every year for how long? How do we not have a process for this?
Yeah.
Um, so I just remember everyone saying like, don't wait, like, don't wait till a year out. You got to start early. So like
Hmm.
2 years out, I was like, okay, like I'm just gonna shoot an email out to people and then be like,
Right.
hey, and then I had some buddies who were like, hey, here's a list that I got that kind of like gives you like some milestones and things you want to achieve by certain timelines, and then just figuring out how that works because there's
Yeah.
like I didn't even understand when you drop in Appendix J, it's like you print it out and then you write on paper. I'm like, that doesn't like why am I writing this on paper when I had an electronic copy? Why wouldn't I just digitally sign it? Like that's not how it works. I'm like, it was it just looked odd to me. Like why am I handwriting stuff on
I haven't
on this
physically written a
document?
signature in years.
Yeah, I was like, we're gonna submit this electronically, and they're like, yes. I'm like, I feel like Adobe could just digitally sign. I don't know, it needs a wet signature. So I'm like, okay, cool. I'm just learning all that stuff, and then like all the different medical stuff,
Yeah.
and learning how physically and mentally broken I am,
Yeah.
according to like the doctors. Like, oh, like it's not supposed to hurt every morning when I get up. Like my ankles aren't supposed to crack and pop. And they're like, no, that's not
Man.
normal. I'm like, oh, okay. So a lot of,
Yeah. The body starts betraying you a little bit.
oh yeah,
First of all, as you get older in general, but also just, the weathering that we've put on our bodies and continue to do.
yeah, and I feel like
Yeah.
it sneaks up on you. You just
It does. I did my
I was
I
like,
did my ruck this morning. I mean, and I pushed it. I was proud of the pace. I posted. I was like, I normally don't post results, but I was like, that was a good ruck, man. And I wanted to like, I always stay accountable with people and show up every Wednesday and do like my ruck day, my home day. But I was like, all right, I'll post the results because some people are like, oh, how did you do? What did you do? I was like, fine, I'll tell you. But I'll tell you what, to get those results, man, my hips were on fire afterwards. Like the
yeah,
movement prep that I do for a ruck day, if you're watching this, and then the recovery that I have to do to actually function the rest of the day is I got to put my work in on both ends, man. It
oh
is so
yeah,
much more than just the exercise, which is
yeah,
the smart way.
yeah.
Um,
It's not like back when we were young where it's just like, I'll just crush a 36 pack the night before, and then we'll go PR squats in the morning, and like
yeah,
no
yo, one,
issues. You're like fine.
yeah, two things I want young Marines to take the wisdom from this master sergeant. Listen to this, dude. First one was like getting your schooling. That's fantastic because are you using tuition assistance?
Oh yeah, tuition
Okay,
assistance, and I actually for the first time filled out the FAFSA paperwork correctly and entirely.
nice.
So I was able to also take advantage of that because the TA
Yeah,
is only 4,500, so like
right.
basically, if I want to be able to stay school, like
Right.
keep making progress 24/7 throughout the whole
Right.
year, we're gonna have to use that fastball in the back end because
Yeah,
the
there's a
TA
certain
won't.
cutoff. So,
Yeah.
yeah, if you're watching this and you're in the military and you haven't used it, because maybe this will make its way out to like younger NCOs or younger Marines who are like, just
Yes.
following you, wanting to be little Matt Solowynsky's one day when they grow up, as you should be, as a good guy. But look into tuition assistance. Get some. It's free. It's free for you. Like not using that benefit is bananas to me.
Yes.
And that's just it's such a cool advantage, and I'm proud of you for doing it, man, because it does take the discipline to say like, all right, I'm going to commit to it. I'm just going to do it, and
Yeah.
one one credit hour at a time, baby. I'm going to knock this thing down, and maybe at the end of it, I'll have something to show for. So
Yep.
yeah, that's good work. Cool. All right. So how do you hope to grow or transform? Is you find time for rest and reflection heading into the weekend? And I know you're a busy man, so maybe those are foreign words to you. So maybe that prompt in itself is telling you to just take a beat and slow down a little bit. But what are you focused on?
Uh, so to be honest, I don't really know how to answer that one. I am like super regimented,
Mm-hmm.
and realistically, like I'll probably do like some LLC work or like some social media stuff or some video recording for like YouTube.
Yep.
Um, but I actually just really started getting into this, and I know it's funny because you say it now. I'm thinking like, oh, this is kind of like self-regulating. Because I used to be one of those like 7 days a week. If I haven't hit the gym, like you're a failure. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
something's wrong. Like quit being a coward. Um, and now since I did my first bodybuilding show back in 2023,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I have free time because I'm up here in Quantico, by myself because the family's still down in North Carolina. I got to fill the time in with something. So I hired a coach. Like I'm doing the whole thing. Like he's like, hey, this is your training plan. Days off. You will take days off. They are required.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it's like I know that, but what am I supposed to do with my life? Like that's 3 hours of my
If I'm
day that
not
like I
doing
don't now.
everything all
Yeah,
the
it's like
time.
3 hours of my day I now don't know what to do with. Um, so like a lot of it will be definitely like meal prep. Um, maybe take a nap. I've done that once or twice in my
There's a
life. Like
novel idea.
it's
Whoa.
it's weird, but like usually I struggle, but um I'm getting better at like using the weekend for literally like recharging and recovering,
Mm-hmm.
catching up on sleep, finishing up little bits here and there. Like I said, another good thing for me this month is I don't have school because like we were talking about earlier
Right.
offline, like I always have a exam or a quiz or a final that's due on a Sunday. So like for me, it's like, okay, I can either like chill and then just cram really hard on Sunday or like spread it out through the weekend.
Yeah.
Now that I don't have that, so like this would be the first weekend of like this month where like I'm gonna actually try to like just do normal stuff,
Yeah.
do some laundry,
Yeah.
like fold some clothes, uh, cook some food. I don't own a TV, so maybe I'll watch some Netflix on my phone.
There you go.
Um, But
It's
yeah, it's
cool.
just that's really it. Like I said, that's one of my I'm not really good at that. I'm at 37. I'm still learning how to figure that part out.
It's difficult, man. I mean, you could go back and watch or listen to a lot of episodes that I've had on this with different people that I've hosted, and so many of them, a lot of them more recent ones too. When I ask them, like, "Hey, like, how are you trying to like grow?" and I ask the same question of everybody, and so many people are going, "Oh, I'm just trying to like find some margin, just actually making margin to actually rest and unwind." And that's sort of the cool thing of sitting on this side of maybe a podcast episode or hosting it because I hear people's response, and it's not really a leading question. You can just answer that however you want. And so many people say it spaced out almost the same way. Like, man, the way you frame that, I actually am just hoping I can find time for rest and reflection. So maybe it is a leading question a little bit for that, but it's just, I think it's so important. And I mean, you nailed it. Something, whether it's bodybuilding, so whether it's mental, physical, emotional, spiritual growth, like if you don't rest, you can never really grow because you need that time off to really let the system do its process.
Yeah.
But it's hard. But I love that you said when we geared this up and started recording here, you're like, "Yo, I cleared the rest of my night," and you said, "Man, I'm thankful for that." Me too, because even though it's late here, I'm thankful that I have the space to connect with a dude like you, with a good friend, on a really important topic. Not just for other people. This is for other people and like for my kids one day and everything. But it's also every time I do something like this with someone I respect and appreciate, man, it charges me up. Like I walk away from doing stuff like this really almost refreshed. So as weird as that sounds, like moments like this where I have a free evening or early in the morning in Norway, whatever it may be. I don't even know what time it is right now. It's early. But whenever I can do this sort of thing, even though it's taking time, it's it's a little bit of a recharge and a shift from what I typically would do. So I look forward to it. So I almost like I'd come back at you with that of like resting and reflecting and recharging doesn't necessarily mean you sit there and do nothing at all. It might just be something that actually brings you a lot of joy or it brings you a lot of energy or it recharges the battery that you normally don't charge. Um,
That's fair.
so
That's a
for
good
me, like
statement.
that's what this is. It's like, dude, yeah, I might spend a couple hours talking with you and I'm not necessarily sleeping or doing nothing, but I walk away from this like feeling pretty fulfilled, man. Like feeling pretty charged up. So yeah, that's cool. All right. So this one, you can tell this however you want, as long or as short as you want this response to be. But what is your story? What's the story of Matt? What you got?
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, born and raised Southern California. Um, I know a lot of people. Anyone who watches this and knows me, they're gonna be like, "I never would have thought you were from California." Like, I know, I don't know. I'm not a hippie. um, but I'm definitely a SoCal broho, as they say. Grew up with bandanas, lifted trucks, King
Yep.
Cottonmouth Kings, the whole nine. Dickies,
Yeah.
Converse. That was me. I mean, I still got 3 pairs of Converse sitting in the closet right
As you should.
now. So, um, honestly, I was not born in, like, not bred for the military as far as like upbringing.
Hmm.
I think I had some uncles on my dad's side that were in the military. And my dad was much older than my mom because that was his second marriage. So he was, and I can't remember. He had a lot of brothers and sisters. He was somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
So I mean, I honestly might have had like uncles that were in Vietnam, like that. Like that was the big gap.
Yeah.
It was pretty wild. Um, but never pushed any of that stuff, like I said. And then uh, I had two half sisters from my dad's first marriage, like almost like a 10-year spread. So like I knew them, we got along, but like they didn't live at the house. They were
Hmm.
already up and out by that time. So it was just me and my younger brother. He was 3 years younger than me. Um, I mean, went to school, did the thing. School was boring. Honestly, not because it was like I was distracted, but I mean, I had like a 3.9 GPA. Like I was the kid that got all my homework done before the bell rang to go to the next class.
Right.
So I just did the thing. And I think a lot of that probably is a combination of both my parents. My dad, not super intelligent, and I'm not dumb, but I mean, he wasn't like a doctor or anything. I mean, he was a truck driver. I mean, that's what he did
Right.
for. So he was 18-hour days
Hmm.
every day. And he would come home, he was the one, if something was broken in the house, like he fixed it. If mom wanted like a portion of the backyard remodeled, it was like me and my brother and him were out there laying brick and
Right.
like doing the thing. So very active outside sports, the whole nine, me and my brother. We're doing yard work with dad or whatever. All the way up through high school. And then my dad passed. This is kind of sounds silly because I really can't remember. I want to say when I was 15. Dad
Hmm.
got divorced, I think when I was like 12 or 13.
Hmm.
Um, I can't remember. I literally cannot remember how old I was. I know I had blown out my first knee in football, so it was like 10th grade, which I
Yeah.
think I was 15 because I think it was before I had my driver's license. Um, he, heavy smoker, heavy drinker, had
Hmm.
asthma, and he was literally sometimes like 2, 3 in the morning getting ready to jump in the big rig to go do his thing. Had an asthma attack, and his inhaler was still in his pickup truck because he was still like throwing his
Oh
food and
wow.
stuff in there.
Yeah.
So he couldn't get to it, and the one that he had in there was empty, which he was probably was supposed to swap out, and he just didn't have in his pocket because I mean, who expects to have an asthma attack? Like it's usually not something that like happens,
Right.
planned. So he ended up rolling into a heart attack. He ended up passing. So like I said, the big thing I remember is like I remember being in the garage. I don't know what I was doing. Stupid kid stuff. I was probably like trying to learn how to do a kickflip on skateboard or something. A cop rolls up and comes walking up, and I'm like, shit, what did I do? Like,
I didn't
oh
do it. I'm so
no,
sorry.
what did I do this time? I don't remember. Like, I'm pretty sure I haven't done anything dumb. And he was just like, hey, is your mom home? I'm like, yeah, she's inside. He's like, yeah, you mind if I talk to her? And I was like, what did I do? He's like, no, no, you're good. And my neighbor was a cop. Whole family, like that's like their
Hmm.
bloodline. Like,
Right.
some people have like, what's his it, Dan, Lieutenant Dan.
Yep.
Everyone in his family was in the military from like the beginning of time. Like
Right.
that's how this family was. So it wasn't unusual to have, but they don't usually walk up my driveway. They next
Yeah.
door. So I go and get her. I'm like, hey mom, there's a cop outside. She's like, what'd you do? I was like, he said I didn't do anything. I
I'm
swear
hoping
I
nothing.
don't remember doing anything.
Yeah.
Because it's not the first time I had a cop roll up and be like, oh, like, I cut somebody off when I was driving, with my permit. And then like, they called the police and like gave them my driver's license or my
Hmm.
license plate number. And I got like a knock on the door and I was like, oh shit, I guess I was speeding. Damn. Nothing super crazy. But yeah, so I guess he went and told her that. And then I remember I was eating a bag of hot Cheetos. Like that's my vivid memory. Cop comes
Hmm.
up, does that. And then I'm eating a bag of hot Cheetos because I was just waiting to get my ass chewed for something that he lied. I know I did something. She brings me into the room and she tells me, and like, I think that was for me. Now looking back was the first pivot point because I was just like, oh, okay. She's like, are you
Yeah.
okay? I was like, yeah. I mean, you can't do anything about it now, right? And then like, she's obviously emotional. I didn't. I guess I just didn't know how to respond. That's probably where I first
Hmm.
realized like I was really good at car. What's that word? Car.
Compartmentalizing.
Yeah, there you go. Compartmentalizing. I was trying to skip the O in there. I was couldn't figure out the word. Like I can immediately I can do that. Like as soon as
Yeah.
something happens within like 10, 15 seconds, I'm like, don't like that, put it in a box and it goes away. And
Hmm.
that was probably like the first time I really realized like that's a me thing. Then, obviously kind of being a knucklehead through school at that point, I didn't really notice it, but I guess obviously it affected me in some way. So I
Hmm.
started slipping in school. Um, but I still had like a 3.8, 3.6. Um, and then I had a couple good friends that were joining the military, like they knew they were going to be in the military, and I didn't really have like a plan. I kind of always felt like I was probably going to end up that way, but it wasn't like intentional. And
Right.
then literally my buddy like tricked me into like, hey, we got to go talk to the teacher about schoolwork or something. I was like, okay, I turn on the corner, there's a recruiter, and like all downhill from there. um, so like I think and that was like my senior year by that point, and it was like 3 months before we graduated, and I was like, cool, gonna do it. Went and talked to my mom. She's like, absolutely not. And I was like, Mom, I turned 18 in like 21 days. So like, I'm basically giving you the opportunity to like be okay with this, or in 22 days, I'm going to sign the paperwork anyway.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it's going to go. I've always, and she's told me this later in life. She's like, you have always been black and white. Like, there's no gray area. Like, if you're going to do something, it's going to happen.
Hmm.
So she's like, I learned that very young, like when you were very young. And I was like, that's fair. So yeah, I mean, I literally signed up where I was like, when's the first bus? It was 5 days after I graduated high school. I was like, we're going. Um, did that, joined the Marine Corps, found out that there was uh, a recruit depot in San Diego because I did not know that, even though I was like an hour away. Oh no, sorry, my camera does that.
You're good.
Um, yeah, so I went to boot camp in in July 5th of 2005.
Hmm.
Literally right
There you
after
are.
4th
You're
of
back.
July. Yep. Uh, did boot camp, came out honor grad because that's where I really started realizing like how effective I am at like an organized structure.
Yeah.
Um, or like, oh, you're just gonna they tell you what to do, you do it, and then like you're good. Okay, so like I was just really
I
good
can
at
do
doing what I
this.
was told and not having to
Yeah.
think. Um, Graduated in September, and then from there I went to SOI in Camp Pendleton. Found out there was Camp Pendleton was also a base that was the Marine Corps. That was about an hour south of where I grew up because didn't know
Yeah.
that either. And everyone's like, what the heck's wrong with you? I was like, dude, I went north. I never went south. I just didn't know.
Yeah.
Like, um, did that. And then I ended up getting in some trouble young. My first couple months in, not going to go into the details, but basically, like, I was the target because I was the honorman at a boot camp. So,
Hmm.
like, you have the senior lance corporals that have done a deployment, and then you show up as a lance corporal. It's like we have to establish who's the actual lance corporal here. And I was just like,
Right.
I'm not like I know I don't know jack shit. Like I've
Yeah.
been around for like 3 seconds. Like I don't, but it didn't matter to them. And back then, 2005 time frame, it was just a different kind of like we were talking about earlier. It's just a different lifestyle back then as far as like
Sure.
the military considered, because it was the heat of the war and all that stuff. So then after that, in my little scuffle with trouble, I ended up at 1-4, and then ended up in CAT. I did 2 deployments. Take that back. 3 deployments with CAT section. 2 Iraq deployments. One to Al Qaim. The next one was Southern Fallujah. And
Hmm.
then I did my first MEU, and I was like, please never again. This was horrible. It was the 15th MEU,
Hmm.
um, which was just not cool. I think the coolest thing was we went to Kuwait and we had like 300,000 rounds of every type of ammo you could have. And they were like,
Yeah.
you need to shoot all this in a week. And I was like, I think we melted every barrel. It was rough. Um,
So wait, just to back it up for a second. So if you were
yep.
with Cap, did you come in? What was your occupation for those that are
Oh, sorry. So I
military
was at
side?
0311, so just infantry rifleman.
Yep.
But because at that time frame, they had cat platoons, and the cat platoons it was weird because they were in that transition from cat to map, the mobile assault platoon. So the
Yep.
cat platoon was usually just the weapons guys, your machine gunners, assault
Yeah.
men, missile men, and mortarmen. And
Yep.
then they changed it to maps. We had map 1, 2, and 3. So I think that was from my first to second deployment. And so that's where it was
Hmm.
just like kind of like a whole mix. So like, hey, you had any infantry MOS, they were all kind of smashed together, except for map 3, which kind of always was the mortar platoon. They
Right.
just changed their name because they're like, hey, you guys, if we need to drop mortars, like it would make sense to have all the dudes that know how to do that together in a group instead of spread all over the place.
Yeah.
Because the last thing you want to do is be hanging on one and then, now you're hanging on 3 because that's all you got left.
Right.
Um,
Exactly.
so I was all mixed in with that. I'm sorry, we were mixed together with that in that formation. And then after my third deployment, I came back early because one of my junior Marines, he was, I can't remember what they call him, but it was like the working party for the ships.
Hmm.
It's like, everyone gives up like 3 Marines or whatever, and they're like the cargo Marines or whatever. So they help pack
Like the
the
ship's
ship.
tax, I think they call it actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so he was helping, I can't remember, I think it was either unloading or offloading a bunch of equipment. And it was one of the trailers that hooked to the back of the Humvee. And they didn't have it on the Humvee, so they're like manually moving it. And I mean, the ship was ported, it wasn't moving or anything.
Right.
Somehow, some way, it rolled, and I can't, those little X's they have where like
Hmm.
they hook the straps in.
Yeah, where you can gripe
Well,
stuff down. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so his foot basically got caught up in it. And then the trailer
Oh.
came over the top. So his shin was
Oh.
touching his toes, basically, if there
Oh.
wasn't like the little
God.
piece of metal that it was hooked under.
Yeah.
So it tore all the ligaments in his foot.
Ouch.
Um, and I was the
Mm.
only guy that had done the GTTC card in my platoon. And I had just done it like a week prior because they're like, oh,
Yeah.
right, we don't have these. We need some of these. So I got to be the guy that took him back because
Right.
he had to get like all kinds of surgeries and stuff.
Mm.
We ended up, going to Germany where they do the Roman sandal, which if no one's ever heard, I don't know the technical term. I know that's the
Yeah.
nickname. But basically, it's gotten so swollen that they had to cut it open and then basically strap like I don't know, some kind of string or whatever it is, basically to keep it. Dang, this camera's not being on par today. Basically, so that it was to relieve pressure, so then that way, like the blood could still flow, so he didn't end up losing his foot or losing toes or anything like that.
Hmm.
Um, Came back, and then basically I got a call and they're like, hey, the performance too close to being done. So just find a school that you want to go to. We're going to leave you there. It doesn't make sense for us to, bring you back out just on the way back. Cause
Yeah.
I would have met up with them in Hawaii and then did the whole 7 days back on ship. And they were like, that's dumb. So I ended up going to corporal's course because that was the only thing available, which was not a fun time. Um, and then I was up for reenlistment. So I was about to put in a recon package.
Hmm.
And I just needed like the first sergeant signature and the CO signature, I think, was left. And then my platoon commander came up to me. It was like Friday night, 1800, somewhere around there. And he was like, hey, you want to take the scout sniper in, doc? And I was like, I haven't been in the field in a while. I just went to the course. Like, I feel kind of dirty. I probably should do some field work. Sure. When
Yeah.
is it, sir? He's like, it's 04 Monday morning. I'm like in less than 72 hours Monday morning? He's like, yep. He's like, here's the gear list. And I was like, I already signed you up. And I was like, all right, I guess I'm doing this. So did that. And that was a fun 5 days of fun in the sun. As Major Payne would say, seven 23-hour days of fun and adventure.
So for those that aren't familiar with Scout Sniper and Doc, or yeah, a lot of Marines wouldn't be either, to be honest, unless they went through it. So give a quick snapshot of what that was like for you, if you would, or like what that experience was like for you, because it's much different than maybe what other people have gone through. So Sniper and Doc for you, what was that like the first time?
So super physically intensive. Like I said, mentally not too big of an issue for me. But like I said earlier, because I realized at a very young age I'm really good at compartmentalizing. I'm gonna have to say that
Yeah,
word every time. Just sound it out.
you crushed it.
Um,
Good job.
so like mentally, I don't get affected by a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it's like just keep going. You can't stop time. You're gonna have to end eventually. So ours was 5 days, and like I like to quote Major Payne's 23-hour days of fun and adventure. Ours was 5 23-hour days of fun and adventure.
Yeah.
And it's mainly the purpose of it is to, one, put the individual under stress, and then also put them in groups and put them under stress to see how they work as a team.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is this guy going to clam up? Is he going to only worry about himself, or is he still going to try and support the group to accomplish whatever the task is? And it's, usually like, hey, we're going to take a pallet. We're going to put a, what is it, the 50-gallon trash can on it, and we're going to fill it like a quarter of the way with water, which is surprisingly heavy for
Oh
only
yeah.
being a quarter full. And then you guys have to get it from point A to point B, and it might be like 2 miles. But you've got like 6 dudes, so you can figure out how to like round robin and do the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to have so much water selling it by the end. Like, so if you tip it over and spill it, like then you have to refill it and all this stuff. And just see how you work as a team. And then also obviously some basic infantry skills like land nav,
Mm-hmm.
maybe a BST, which is the basic skills test. I don't
Yep.
think they do it
Right.
anymore, but we used to do that.
I know what
And
you're
it's
talking
just
about. Yeah.
yeah, just like basic information on like weapons, some tactics stuff, like just general
Right.
things that a rifleman should know. So they kind of know like, hey, how is this guy as a rifleman before we even pretend like we're going to try and train him to be the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, that's we support the riflemen. So if we don't know
Right.
how they operate, probably not the best choice. And yeah, so we did that. So the one thing I will say is like I strained my IT band the first day.
Mm.
I don't know what I did. It was like PFT, 2.5 mile run to the O course at SOI, double O course, 2.5 mile run back. And somewhere along there, like my knee was just not happy.
Mm.
Um, and so it was the entire 5 days up until the very last day. We had a 12-mile ruck that was basically like, hey, that's the last thing you do before you get into Charlie's and you do your interview.
Mm.
And I won't say his name because I don't want to be a jerk, but like I was so far behind in the back that the platoon commander at the time got out of the safety vic, walked up to me. He's like, hey, do we need to put you in the back of the truck? And me, probably not the smartest thing to say, but I think it was the right thing to say because obviously the results are what they are. Being a corporal, I looked at him and I was like, sir, I was like, would you like me to put you in the back of the truck? I was like, you guys can go ahead. I know where I'm going. I'll get there.
I love that
I'm
response.
walking.
That makes my heart so happy.
and
Come on.
it was like 3 miles in. That was the worst part. And they were like, I can't even see anybody else.
Right.
Probably for another mile, I limp. He goes back to the truck like, all right, corporal. I limped for like another mile, and then I guess my body was finally like, okay, we're just being stupid today. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is what we're doing. So it just stopped hurting, and I went from dead last out of the 12 that were left to like third in the next nine
Wow.
miles. The 2 weeks after that, I couldn't even walk, but ended up which I think honestly that was probably a big thing where they were like, okay, like this dude has like he'll go the distance, like he's that kind of special stupid.
I know you're going to keep going, but just, I mean, I hope that some of y'all are unpacking the the things you can pull away from just self-regulation, and you're going through the story, and it's not even really connecting specifically to like, oh, what emotions were you feeling, like physical things. But I know that sort of feeling, man. We've both been through hard things, difficult
Yeah.
things through our infantry training, where even the ability for you to say, oh, I could compartmentalize, or I could, you know, pull myself out of this headspace and just know what I needed to do. That's the ability to regulate what most people would say, oh, I'm not feeling this right now. And you're not letting your feelings drive you. I think even the story of like 3 miles in and you finally just sort of buckle up and go like, all right, for whatever reason, I'm just gonna do it. Um, yeah, there's so much that I hope people can pull away from this and we'll unpack it. But that's who I know you to be. That's who I know like a scout sniper to be and a reliable infantry marine to be. But that's different. That's not commonplace for a lot of people, man.
No,
Um,
yeah, agreed.
it really isn't. Like, so that's like it's a special breed. It really is. And there's something about Marines that it's generally speaking, there's a special breed of people where they do things that most people look at and go like, that's crazy. Why would you do that? Or how could you do that? Um, and I mean, you can answer that for yourself, like whatever got you to that point in your life, or maybe it's part of how you were raised, your personality as well. But that's not a small thing to say during an indoc. You look at the officer, and a lot of people younger might say, like, okay, you're a corporal, he's a lieutenant. I don't know, man. Like the Marine Corps that Matt and I came up in when we were younger, when you're a young NCO and you have an officer over you, you are looking at them with the utmost respect, regardless of opinions. Like there was no insubordination. So for him to be so gritty that he looks at the students like, I don't know, do you want me to put you in the back of the truck? Like that fire is exactly what a young infantry officer wants and what those guys want. Like I guarantee you that was a good tipping point for him to be like, oh, this corporal's got it going on. Like he's being respectful, but also like he got some balls on him to talk to me that way. I want a gritty dude like that.
Yeah,
That's
that's what I was saying. I
gonna
was
be
like,
alone.
I guess it had to be the right answer because like
Yeah. For whatever
I
reason, it
didn't get in
shook out
trouble.
for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so did that. Did the board. Obviously, the board was interesting. Because they ask you all kinds of stuff. Like, you've probably done obviously plenty of boards, and it's not like a
Right.
meritorious sergeant board or like Marine
Hmm.
of the Quarter board. Like these are like because I've obviously been on the other end as well during
Right.
indocs when I was running them. And
Right.
it's like, I'm going to ask this question just to mess with this dude's head. And then we're going to ask the real questions. So, like, right out the gate, it'd be like, the kill one, marry one, fuck one. Oprah Winfrey, Rosie O'Donnell,
Right.
whoever, insert Ellen DeGeneres.
Right.
And it's like, what? Like, what?
Are you allowed to ask me
like,
that? What are we
can you say
doing?
that again, Sergeant? Like, what? um,
Right.
and just because that threw you out of your loop,
Right.
100%. And then it's like, okay, now it's like, hey, what's in this, if you were in this tactical situation, you had to choose between, saving this Marine's life or saving the squad because you had, he was in a kill zone and you couldn't get to him without guaranteed casualties.
Hmm.
It's like, what's your game plan? And you're like, wait, how did I just go from Rosie O'Donnell to this?
Right.
Just because again, like, there was no real rules for an
Right.
indoc. It was
No.
just like put them in whatever situation that makes them not okay and then
Yeah.
attack, whether it's
Hmm.
physically or mentally with questions.
Right.
Obviously, again, my answers must have been good because I ended up making it. Um, after that, I got fortunately unfortunate that we had school seats coming up the next month. So this was the very first week of January. Like we hadn't even
Hmm.
gone on pre-deployment leave yet. Like they were like, we were doing this before that, get it knocked out. Then the guys will get their 2 weeks of post-deployment leave. And then, get right into the cycle. Cause I was still kind of in that like 6 on, 6 off kind of tempo that
Right.
we were running.
Yep.
And so I think no, 9 or 14 days, those two numbers are sticking in my head. I didn't take leave because California boy, it's like I live right there. Um,
Hmm.
so I went in every day. There was a couple guys that were getting out of the Marine Corps that stayed, and it was like basically like teach me how to make a ghillie suit. Teach me these nomenclature of the weapon systems. Teach me all the things. We would just do that for like 6 hours a day, and then we'd be off. So it was like super easy. I understand like that's not really what life's going to be like once you're in the platoon, but because it was a leave block,
Right.
I just got free knowledge that like nobody else was getting because they were on the leave that they had earned from deployment. During that time, the two guys that were slated to go to school, one ended up busting his knee and the other one busted his ankle. And they were like, guess what, Solo? Like, you are the only Marine in this platoon right now that's going to stay in the platoon that has combat experience, and you're an NCO. You're going to school.
Hmm.
So I had been in the platoon maybe 21 total days to go to school. I somehow survived the first 9 weeks, and then we got to UKD and just I think my best run out of all the attempts that we had was like a 78%. You need an 80 to pass. Just wasn't
That's
working out.
for those listening. That's unknown distance. I'll try to like extrapolate the acronyms for people
Yeah,
that you
sorry.
say.
I'm
No, you're
usually
good.
better at it.
I know it's hard. I know it's so an unknown distance shoot. Yeah. So you just
Yeah.
go out there and yeah.
Yeah. So, like I said, I mean, it was just one of those, and obviously it changed over time where it was just like, hey, you attempt to figure out the distance and then you engage the target. And if you miss,
Right.
like make a correction off of where your miss went and good luck.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think it was me, I think 7 of us ended up failing that qual.
Hmm.
And so ended up coming back, obviously, and that was like the first time where like compartmentalizing was not happening. I think for about a month I was like useless. Um, because that was the probably first real thing in my military career and in my life that had really failed. Like I said before, because like nothing was really hard, like because it wasn't a
Right.
mental game. Like I knew all the things I had to do, but
Yeah.
like the execution was not there, and I didn't know enough to be able to diagnose what the problem was. Like I don't know why I'm missing this target. I have
Right.
no idea. My partner was like, "Bro, I didn't see it. I don't know what to do." And I'm like, so me being, young and inexperienced, I'm like, okay, cycle the bolt, shoot it again. Don't change anything because I don't know what to do.
Right.
Maybe I'll get lucky. And that
Yeah.
was like
What
my,
correction do you make when you don't know where you started wrong to start with?
yeah. So I
Yeah.
was
So
like,
when there's that gap, that's hard. Yeah.
yeah. So it was just like crap. Um, Obviously that's not the right answer. Didn't work out.
Right.
Then we ended up going to Bridgeport. In between, shortly after that, a couple of the senior guys that were still there, like they buddied up with me when we were shooting the ranges, and they were showing me some stuff. So when I went back the second time in September,
Hmm.
crushed it. I was like 98s on all. Like it was like my lowest score on all the calls, minus like the first day because they were like, "Hey, you guys are we did a phase pickup, so you kind of start where you left off at."
Yep.
Um, and so it was me and a new guy. It was a reservist from Fourth Recon, and I was like, he had been in the class with me prior, but he actually broke his ankle, which is why he got dropped. So I was like,
Hmm.
yeah, I want him to be my partner because he didn't fail anything. So I mean, I know he knows what he's doing. He
Right.
just got weak ankles. Um, so the first day, I think it was a prac app. We shot like a 28 because they were like, hey, here's your gun. You guys are both going to shoot it. You have no data on it because we had never
Hmm.
shot it before. So we had
Right.
no understanding of what any of the settings were. So we took that first day, shot real bad, but then we had all the information we needed. And then after that, it was just like you couldn't pay us to miss the target. And
Right.
I often tell people a lot of times I was like, I learned more from my partner who was a student than I did from the instructors because obviously I passed the thing that I had failed because he had just
Right.
showed me some different things like, hey, this is how I do it, this is how I do it, and I was like, oh, I'm going to do it your way because obviously the
Yeah.
way I did it didn't work last time. And it worked out really well, obviously, and so I ended up passing. Then we went on last my last deployment with the unit, which was the 31st MEU. So
Hmm.
I got to experience all the different types of deployments.
Yeah.
We went to Japan. It was not what I wanted, obviously, because it wasn't a combat deployment, but
Hmm.
it was still a good deployment, or whatever relocation of where I sleep.
Yeah.
Um, So I mean, we had a really good platoon, so we were able to, basically, it worked out great for them because we got to really develop the younger guys in
Hmm.
all of the things that we knew because it was basically like continuation of a workup, but
Yeah.
with less. I'm gonna call it battalion bullshit
Hmm.
because we had already done all the things the battalion needed to get certified to deploy. So now
Right.
it was kind of like, hey, white space, do it on your own as long as you build a training plan. So
Hmm.
like I spent an entire month just going over the orders process because I had written more orders than anyone else in the platoon,
Hmm.
except probably the platoon commander. Because I was doing patrols as a lance corporal, as a patrol leader on my first two deployments, with
Right.
CAT. And so I'm like, all right, first paragraph, boom. Here's the thing. Here's your task. Here's an example. You got 2 days to go write one in your rooms, and then we'll go back over it. So they got really, really good at all the things that like a lot of the younger guys don't get the opportunity to learn till they're NCOs,
Right.
and you have to go to a formal school for. So of course, we get back. I took A&S selection, did not get selected.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just well, I guess I can say it now because it's probably not a big deal. But like, I had gotten a DUI
Mm-hmm.
before my second deployment, but it was outside the blotter, so like the Marine Corps didn't find out about it. Well, when I went to selection, of course, they give you a packet and like you got to fill it out. And, I'm like, I don't. This is like spec ops. Like, I don't know how far they're gonna dig. I don't want to look like I'm hiding anything. So of
Right.
course, I wrote fill it out on the packet. And I think that's what actually got me because my performance was, you know, majority of the guys going there are obviously higher level performers because they're trying to get
Right.
to that next level. So I didn't stand out like I wasn't the top guy, wasn't the bottom guy. I was somewhere strong in the middle. Probably I would like to think bottom one third, upper middle third. But when I got boarded, like that obviously got brought up. So of course, said my piece. I was still going through the classes. I hadn't finished them because I was not going to have my platoon suffer for me not going on a field op because I
Right.
made a stupid mistake. So anytime work came, work always came first. So I would just call and pause my classes and then restart them at
Mm-hmm.
the next possible opportunity. And so when I went through ANS, I was still going through the classes at the time. So they were like, you've been taking a long time to do this. You just kind of gap. I think it was kind of like they thought I was purposely like not trying to do them.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I don't really know. Obviously, I gave them my reasons why, and whether that was good enough or not, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I believe that was probably the main reason why I did not get selected. Which I don't fault anybody because again, it's like I don't know you, but you got a DOI and like
Yeah.
information looks questionable. I would probably be the same way.
Yeah.
So from there, I was looking at getting forced out of the Marine Corps because of the tenure, where like if you didn't pick up staff in 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
they forced you out just because we were downsizing. So I ended up over at pre-sniper. I took the chief instructor role for pre-sniper,
Mm-hmm.
where they shifted the zones super huge. So I went from not even being in below zone to being dead center of the zone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had done all the things that could possibly be done between MCIs, Marinette courses, actually going to sergeant's course, all the things. I was like, I did 3 times as much things as everybody else because I was like, I have to like make up for, the things that I don't have. Surprisingly, I got selected for staff sergeant. I really didn't think it was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Had to extend 30 days so I could actually make it to my promotion date.
Yeah.
And then I had already had a package in for SOI, but I had to redo it because now I'm a staff sergeant. So you can't just add a little line on the 5 to make it a 6 because it's
Right.
still a different boat space. So I redid all that package, and then I ended up over at SOI West, where originally I was slated to go to the sniper school once I graduated, but the entire unit was super low on staff NCOs,
Mm-hmm.
especially MCT. Um, and because I was zero point 0.2 points away from being the honor grad, because I got a 98 on drill instead of 100,
Mm-hmm.
because my cadence wasn't cadency enough. Um,
Not
and
cadency enough.
yeah, an LAR guy actually ended up getting it. And I even tried talking to him. I was like, bro, you know where you're going. LAR only goes to one place here. I was like,
Yep.
just botch drill a little bit so I can beat you,
Please
so I could go here. And he was
hook
like,
me up, dude.
nah, man, I can't do that. Best man wins. And I'm like, that's fair. That's fair. Like I can't
Yeah.
knock him for it. I was like, I figured it was worth an ask. Um, so then I'm doing a 10-month stretch at MCT, which honestly wasn't bad.
Sure.
MCT runs like a machine. Like what you're doing every single day of the year. There's no
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah.
So I ended up fast tracking up to platoon commander there after 2 cycles. Um, and then we were doing the 0315 scout primary proof of concepts. So I got pulled over to
Mm-hmm.
the scout sniper school based off of that. I think we did 3 of those. I'm not sure if that's when I ran into you at first or if it was shortly after that. I can't remember exactly when you got there.
It was around
Um,
that time frame. Yeah.
yeah, so
It's
it's that
I think
16-17 time frame.
yeah, because I got there in 17. So I think because Nick Leeds was there too. Um, my
Yeah,
buddy
yep,
Nick
yep,
was there.
yeah, because
So Nick and I
he
were
was our
there.
first company commander.
Yep. And then when he left out, yeah. So that was I came in right as soon as Nick was done running that first proof with you guys that y'all were doing for
Okay.
all the good idea fairs that were coming
Yo,
in,
oh
which
yeah.
y'all had to. Yeah,
Yep, super exciting times.
sure was, buddy. Yeah. So
Um,
that was around that same time. Yep.
okay, yeah. So I did that. And then just the normal day in, day out of sniper school because we had finished that up and submitted that for
Hmm.
review and approval or not. Ended up not getting approved. I'm not really sure how that process played out. Obviously, because us being at the instructor level, we're not in those meetings.
Yeah.
We just collected the data, presented the data, and let it, tell the facts. Um, then so I did that. I think I did another 4 courses there. Because I left in mid of 2019. I ended up
Hmm.
being on the board. I got selected for Gunny,
Yeah.
like within 30 days of me leaving. So of
Hmm.
course I call the monitor, who was Jim Gaminsky, who was just our regimental ops chief at the time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Jim, I just got or I just got selected to Gunny. He's like, I know, dude, you're making my life real hard. And I'm like, dude, we talked about this. Like, you knew this was possible. It was coming. Like,
Right.
it wasn't a surprise. Um, I was supposed to go back to the fleet in Lejeune. Then we found out that my buddy Baldwin was there as a platoon sergeant. And I was like, dude, they already have a platoon sergeant. He's like, when did he get there? I'm like, Jim, you're the monitor, not me. Like, I don't track these people.
You tell me, man.
That's your realm. Well, apparently he had got there the year prior. It was with the line platoon because he got there so close to the deployment. They were like, hey, you're gonna come over here after deployment. We'll switch over just because
Hmm.
they had already built up platoon camaraderie, systems, processes. They didn't want to just make it all wonky for 2 platoons, so they just added him into a different platoon.
Yeah.
So which was funny because I found that out through their chief scout through a Facebook message because he was like, hey, where are you going? I was like, to you, dummy. He's like, we just got this guy. So that's why I called Jim. I was like, dude, what's going on?
Hmm.
So I ended up instead getting orders to second EOTG.
Yeah.
Um, so I ended up going over second EOTG, taking over the urban and aerial program over there. I did that for 3 years. That is also where I started RS Solutions on the side. I started training civilians and stuff in precision marksmanship, just for a side gig. Because to be honest, second UTG ran you really, really hard for about eight
Hmm.
months.
Yeah.
Basically, during a MU workup, we worked 6 days a
Hmm.
week, and we only had 16 guys total, so we were a smaller staff compared to at least compared to first UTG. I'm not too sure about third. So we did every course. So it was like you did CPT, you did the security enablers course, you did urban, you did aerial, you did RNS, like everybody did everything because it was all recon marines and snipers. So like,
Right.
and we had like one EOD guy,
I was going
and
to
it
say,
was
so for those that are listening that may not know what he's talking, real quick, just like leveling for you. So, like all the units that are going through getting certified for their deployments, it's the Expeditionary Ops Training Group, EOTG. So, they're basically who's training and certifying certain special skills for Marine Expeditionary Unit, like infantry Marines that are going through. So, what Matt's saying is like urban and aerial sniping, which is it's a different beast to do stuff like that than just regular, especially aerial. Like, and he could go probably days and days on all the different nuances of that skill set because it's his, not mine. But yeah, so like be in that position of being an instructor and facilitating those things. I just think the level of backdrop that I hope you can appreciate is like the experience that comes with being in a certain instructor thing. And he's just going through it humble and I was here and I was here. But there are certain metrics that you can't be a chump teaching and certifying highly skilled precision weapons things at a certain level. So he goes, oh, RS Solutions, which is
reconnaissance and surveillance solutions.
okay.
So the intent was not just to be another marksmanship LLC,
Mm-hmm.
but it was me and a couple other snipers put it together, and we're like, dude, easy way to get in the game. We all know how to
Cool.
shoot. We all know how to teach
Yeah.
shooting because that's what we do professionally. So that's where it
Yeah.
started. I just kind of ended up staying there.
So yeah,
And
so
we never
doing his
really
instructor
expanded.
gig, but then like little entrepreneurship starting to bloom out for you there too, which is cool.
Yeah. So, crap, where was that? Oh yeah. So we did that hard for 8 months, and then after that, it was like, hey, do all your annual training, do whatever sustainment training you guys want to
Mhm.
do. And then here and there we would interact with the other schoolhouses. So like, what I was really big on was for me and my guys, I was like, It's just going to keep happening. We're just going to have to deal with
It's all
it.
good.
Was one, like, we will not train to the standard that we've already accomplished. So,
Mhm.
like, sniper school has basic, or, the basic course has marksmanship standards.
Right.
These are pillars you have to pass or you go away. Known
Mhm.
distance, unknown distance.
Right.
So it's really that's not being friendly today. And then I wonder if they keep. And then so when you get to urban and aerial, same thing. There's hard stops that you have to do in order to. It's just to qualify to get your certification.
Mhm.
So like for me and my guys, I was like, hey, that's like our warm up. We should be able to do that every day of the week
Right.
because if we're instructors, like we've already proven that we can do that.
Mhm.
Um, so we would run the qual. So let's say if it was unknown distance qual, but we're doing it the urban style, so it's just a shorter timeline. I got nothing. Shorter timeline and in kit and smaller targets. And I was like,
Mhm.
hey, we're going to run this course fire, but we're going to do it all in the standing.
Right.
And like that's it. We're not getting in any of the more stable positions. We're going to do it in the worst position possible, and the
Mhm.
expectation is 80 or above. And so we started bringing on some of the other schoolhouses that were around. Dude, it's really, really not being friendly today. Some of the other schoolhouses that were around, and we would hold them to our marksmanship standard, which was our guard training standard, just to try to
Mhm.
spread the love. And then we would invite platoons out there, and they would get to do the same thing because it was like, hey, we can only run so many courses a year, but we have ammo and we have training time.
Right.
Like if your units are cool with it, like we've got all the safety structure, all the stuff. Just bring yourself and your guns, and you can come train with us, like on
Mhm.
our dime.
Sure.
Um, so I did that all the way up until September of 2022, and then I moved up
Mhm.
to Quantico, where I took over. Well, I took over as the chief instructor, so I was the number 2 guy at the Quantico schoolhouse up until they shut down in 23.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, I really don't know what this camera's doing right now.
I can hear you, man. You sound crystal clear, so you're all good.
All right, I might just let it do the rainbow thing then because it's being real finicky. So we did that up until October of 23, where we shut down, and then I opened up the precision marksmanship course, which I won't go down that road because it's still very much in like its experimental phase, trying to figure out what right looks like.
Right.
Um, but I built that course with the staff up there, and then while I was doing that, I ended up getting selected for Mass Art. Decided that I was going to take the promotion to Mass Art.
Mhm.
Um, since it was getting close to that retirement phase. So now I am the battalion ops chief up there. Right now, I just kind of oversee all the training and the logistics
Right.
of all the courses up there. So making sure everyone's got corpsmen know where they're supposed to be,
Mhm.
ammo's got the right numbers, vehicles, all the things. Make sure all the
Vice President of the U.S. can come shoot on the range.
yep.
All
So
of the
just
things.
yeah, just trying to make sure that everybody has all the things that they need for them to be able to do their job because
Yeah.
they're now doing the job I used to do. So like I know the headaches of like when something goes wrong,
Right.
and being able to be like, hey, don't worry about it, I got it. Give me 30 minutes and I can get this sorted out for you because I've been through this before.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then like we were talking about earlier, I obviously me, my buddy Phil Vallejo, and John Bumpus, we decided to start another LLC called
Mhm.
the Cadre, where right now we are same thing, just training marksmanship for PRS shooters, NRL hunter shooters, hunters in general, people that just want to get
Right.
into the long gun experience.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know if I'm going to say it anyway. If he hears it and he says I wasn't supposed to say it too soon, oh well. Our big kind of focus there is like kind of what we had all kind of noticed in the Marine Corps, where like we want the goal of this one is really to eventually be like training instructors. Like, hey,
Yeah.
this is how you teach. Because there's a
Mhm.
lot of companies out there, and I don't like using the word regurgitation, but like they teach you what they've learned, but at face value, so they don't really go as deep as they could.
Mhm.
Um, so we're trying to basically kind of get the why behind the info, and so then
Yeah.
that way they can be just better at teaching. Because at the end of the day, like you don't have to come train with us.
Right.
We're not the end all be all, but if we can help everybody else, step up their game, that would be the ultimate goal. Where it's like, hey, like we will
Yeah.
help you. Well, between the three of us, we've got damn near 40 years combined
Mm,
of precision shooting and all types
right,
of, you know, facets and styles, whether it's operational or competing or just hunting
right.
or just having fun on the range and, trying to
And there's
get
there's
better.
another level, man. Like so much of your story is packed in with actually instructing that skill set. And this
Yeah.
it sounds cliche. Maybe it's cliche for a good reason though. There are people that are really good at things. They have a very natural gifting or they've worked hard and developed a certain thing. But they are maybe the best at it, but they are really lousy coaches or instructors. So the problem is someone finds maybe good success, like, oh, I can hit a target. I really know what I'm doing. But to be able to teach and develop that in other people is a different caliber. And it actually takes a different skill set and a different mindset and a different set of abilities,
Yes.
like what you're saying. So, like, there's a lot of copy paste of, oh, I took this skill, so now I can just go out and I can retire and I can teach. And maybe there's some success in that for some people, or they can just ride the coattails of, oh, I was maybe even let's say I was a Marine scout sniper. So people immediately are going to be drawn to, oh, you should come with certain credentials. But I'm just going to tell people like that, just if they were good, and this isn't a knock, that doesn't mean that they can teach you how to do that thing
Yeah.
or they can actually help develop that in you. And so someone like Matt, just to give him a plug, I am happy to give you a shameless plug for knowing the skill set that you and Phil and like the team has is not only are they good at doing it, so they can appreciate the experience of what that was like for the first time, which is a big important thing if you want to get on like the nerdy flip side of what I enjoy, like experiential learning, how people develop. You can learn really well from someone that you're going through it the first time with. And like it's hard to remember that learning hump or barrier if you're really far removed several years after you've done it. But I think the gifting of having a really good instructor cadre is that, man, these guys not only were they good at it when they went through the initial time to get certified and blessed off as scout snipers, but now these dudes are sitting here going, yeah, but we've spent our life in this training and development and really poured ourselves into mastering the craft of not just being a practitioner, but making other practitioners and like training the trainers on how to do it. Man, that's like not everybody can do that. That's like that in itself is a gift and a skill. So it's sort of a dime a dozen to be like, oh, we have another guy that's a retired recon sniper that's going to tell me how I can be fit and have chiseled abs and shoot from a mile away and all the things and be super high speed, low drag and rock and roll if that's what you want to be doing. But there are a few people that are actually really good at what you're talking about and what I think you're really good at, what I know you to be good at. So that's a plug, man. If you want to get good at actually training people when it comes to that realm, what Matt's doing, like hit this guy up. Of course, I'm going to tag all your stuff because that's what I do. But
Appreciate it.
there's a lot of wannabes out there, man. And just because you come with a story of like, ooh, I was in combat and I did sniping in combat, just because someone says that to you doesn't mean they actually know how to teach you to do the things that you need to be successful in that space. It might just be that like you might have someone like a Michael Jordan or a Kobe Bryant or a Steph Curry, and man, Steph can rain the threes. Maybe he could coach, but maybe he couldn't. So that you can't just take someone's skill set for themselves and think that translates into they're going to be able to develop that in you. Um, yes, I just think there's a lot of wannabes out there. There's a lot of posers. Don't go wholesale into believing everybody just because they were in the military that they know what they're talking about when it comes to actually like something you're going to throw at money for training. They might not know anything about how to train you. So just yeah, that's the
That's
real deal.
that's one of our huge things, and we say it all the time in like our circle, like just validate the people you're trying to learn from. Um,
Yeah,
because
absolutely, man.
it's one of those like, you know, they should have reviews, or you might know someone who knows someone that trained with them, and they'll, give you the scoop. Because like I said, I was like, oh, we're not the end all be all, we're not the best out there. But like I said, to your point, like when I was a sergeant and I was instructing compared to now, like there's a huge gap. Like,
Yeah,
like it's almost one of those like, man, I can't believe like I sucked back then, but I only knew what I knew, and
right.
fortunately, being around better people than me, like again, I know you said it earlier, like Steve Wynn. Like Steve Wynn is still one of those dudes where like I could text him right now if I don't know something, and he'll give me the answer, or he'll give me the publication, the chapter, the page, and the sub paragraph. And I'm like,
Man, I love Steve. That dude is
man,
just
you make
he's
smart
so
people look
good.
dumb. You're
No,
like,
he's just and again, he just has that gift and you have it as well. Don't shortchange yourself. But there's guys like Steve that yeah, of course they can shoot. Of course they're a good sniper. But he just commands the respect of any topic he's teaching because he's just gifted in it. You're like,
yes,
man, this guy was made to teach people things
yeah,
because he's so good.
yeah. And that's like I said, I credit a lot of my growth and success to being around people like that because it's like
Yeah,
just watching the way he conducted his just daily life.
yeah.
Like I always tell this joke because it's a real thing, but it sounds like a joke. Steve is the dude who, when he needed to buy a flashlight, can't remember if it was a weapon mounted flashlight or just a regular flashlight. He built an Excel spreadsheet with all the different flashlights that he was interested in. The lumens, the battery life, the type of batteries they took, the beam divergence, the length. Like he had all that, and I'm like, "What are you doing on there, Steve?" He's like, "I don't know what flashlight I want to get, so I'm trying to compare and contrast." I'm like, "Why does this look like you're putting together data sets for like a science project?" He's like, "Well, I got to compare all the things," but
Because he
like
was.
to him that was normal.
I
And I'm
know.
over here like, I'll just get the Surefire because like that's what everybody's got. And
Right.
like, it's cool. And it fits in my pouch.
That's right.
um, but yeah, like he would just deep dive. So like that's where being around him like every day, like and then because he would sometimes just I used to call like, he's the paladin of like the Marine Corps. Because
Right.
like if something wasn't done right, like he would go on a rave and a rant of like, this is doctrine, this is publication, this is how it's
Hmm.
supposed to be done. The fact that we're not doing it this way, and like for like 45 minutes. And I'm like, you good? He's like, yeah, obviously we're gonna do it that way because the boss said we're doing it, but like, what do we even have all this stuff for if we're not gonna do it that way? Like, what's the
God, I
point?
love that dude.
And then we would go knock it out of the park anyway. And he
Right.
just needed that time sometimes where he's just like, I just got someone's got to listen to it. And you're the only one here, Matt. So you're getting the verbal beating. I'm like, all right, cool.
Yeah, but I mean, this sort of thanks for sharing your story, man. I know there's even so much more that we can unpack, but I think this is a really good time to transition into like this next question of just asking how you frame or describe self-regulation. Because as I'm hearing that, like I do think of people like you, Steve, a lot of guys from that cadre who are just absolutely rock solid. And I know this because I was exposed to a lot of the conversations and a part of a lot of the conversations where what you present, whether it be the students that were coming through the courses or to people external to our small group, like I appreciated the team we had because we could just be blunt and honest with each other
Yeah.
because we're going through the same thing together. But that ability to self regulate, to control emotions, but also to have a space where you could speak those frustrations to where, this is an internal thing we can grapple with. But when we turn outside, we're unified. It's almost like a marriage. Like we're a unified front when we go out in front of the kids
Yep.
because we have a mission to do. So I think there's such a good balance of being able to regulate what the frustrations or the helmet fires that are happening or things just like things are flaring up and they really get you heated. Like being able to navigate how to regulate yourself and your emotions when you're individually or even more difficult when you lump a group of people together and all of those feels come smashing in.
Yeah.
And that is the essence of what you've navigated, whether it be on, a sniper team or instructor cadres or whatever. So like if you're going to frame just simply how you view self-regulation or control, like what does that look like from your perspective? How do you think of that term?
So I'm glad that you sent me these questions ahead of time because that one was like a tough one. Um, I
I
don't know
got
if
you,
my
man.
answer is like a good answer because it's kind of weird. Like I have over time kind of realized like I put a lot of time and effort and I invest. Like I'm one of those like I go till the job's done. Like
Mhm.
that's just how I do things.
Right.
I can't. I'm not very good at like starting something new till I've completed the task in front of me.
Mhm.
I'll lose sleep. It'll freak me out. Like I should have stayed and got it finished. Um, but I've also learned like emotionally to not care, and it sounds like it's like an oxymoron. Um, but I just have learned I do the thing because it's the right thing to do or it's the proper way to do it.
Mm.
And I don't think that was developed from the Marine Corps, so that's not like the robot Marine thing in me.
Sure.
Um, I and I hope she doesn't listen to this because I would never tell her this to her face because me and my mom are both stubborn. But I really got that, I think, from my mom. The more as I've gotten older and kind of looked at it, like,
Hmm.
she ended up being a single mom, worked. She went to every practice, every sports game. Obviously, me and my brother, age gap. Um, Also, I didn't mention it earlier, but like my brother was deaf, like born deaf. So
Mm.
obviously, there was a lot of time and effort had to be put
Oh,
into him to
wow.
help for school and education and things that
Yeah,
like
man.
they didn't have back then.
Hmm.
So like, they just didn't have the same accommodations that they do now. So at a very young age, I kind of learned how to just take care of myself
Right.
because I kind of had to. And it was just
Hmm.
expected. Or like if my brother did something wrong, and this is where she'll get mad at me. Because I remember very specifically, she chewed my ass one day in the car, and I was like, I didn't do anything wrong. Like, he's the one that messed up. Why are you yelling at me? And it was like, well, you can hear me. And so I was like, oh god damn it. I couldn't tell you how old, like I had to be around 10. Like it's
Right.
my guess. So I was just like, okay, but I think like those little experiences back then, I was just like, this is some bullshit. But like I kind of learned like, hey, like stuff's gonna happen no matter what.
Hmm.
You're gonna get an order or you're gonna get a task or something you didn't expect to have happen is gonna throw a monkey wrench into the game plan. And you gotta adapt and roll with it. So I've gotten very good at not getting so emotionally tied to the thing as opposed to like we have to get the thing done.
Right.
They always say don't fall in love with the plan because something's going to happen. It never survives first contact or the first bullet. So I've gotten really, really good at just like, hey, this is the end state. There's going to be unforeseen circumstances between now and then, and we adapt as it comes and we
Hmm.
figure it out.
Yeah.
And I've always been one of those guys where it's like, hey, we could wait till tomorrow, or we could just keep doing it because we're already here and let's get it
Right.
done.
Yeah.
And like I said, I sort of kind of wrap it all up into I guess like a more logical summary is like uh I don't get emotionally attached to the process or the plan,
Hmm.
um, but I will execute it by whatever means necessary to get it done.
Right.
And that's kind of like how I self-regulate because like I said when I was younger, like I would freak the fuck out
Yeah.
if something didn't happen right, and I'm like, no, like this was it. Now everything's fucked up, and just I guess age, I've learned like, man, something always happens.
Right.
But is it the end of the world? No.
Yeah.
Like, is he gonna is anyone gonna die? No.
Right.
Okay. We're gonna get a little frustrated. We're gonna have to make a call an audible. Um, and that has helped me a lot. Like I said, same thing. Like just I used to be very like gotta work out 7 days a week, 3 hours in the gym. That's my thing.
Right.
Like I have to do it. And then if I didn't do it, like there was times where like my wife would be like, "Yeah, I'm in the gym for 2 days because work just took priority." She's like, "Go
Right.
to the gym, turn off your phone, get away from me because you're being a dickhead right now, and I don't want to deal with you." She knew that was like my happy place. But now
Yeah.
I've gotten better at like, hey, like being in the moment and like when things happen, we just roll with the punches. And I think that
Yeah.
has changed my ability to legitimately, use self-regulate, just emotions or like work ethic or
Hmm.
just day-to-day adventures is what I'll call them.
Yeah.
Um, because you can't control everything. And it took me, I don't know, maybe 36 years of my 37 years to like figure out that like I cannot control all the variables.
Right.
Um, so you control what you can and you adapt to what you can.
Yeah. Man, that's powerful because I think so for me when I think of hearing that response, the thing that went through my mind as you were talking is I believe that it's such a cliche word that gets thrown around a lot, especially in our circles, in the military circles. People love this word of resilience.
Yeah.
And you're resilient or organizational resilience. I hear that a lot, not even in military, talking with people and through like doing executive coaching stuff. And like it makes it hundreds of times into organizational procedures and documents about how this is going to be resilient, this resilient, that. Okay, fine. And when you ask someone to define resilience, it's really difficult for them to do it. But here's what I'm going to try and frame for some people. On the outside, when you see something that maybe you would identify as resilient, when I listen and when you listen to what Matt just unpacked for you, which sounds simple, but it's not. Like some of the simplest sounding things are the most difficult to actually do and practice every day. When you feel a certain way about a thing and you can control that feeling and not let that feeling drive your actions, but actually, and if you let your feelings drive your actions, that is going to shape who you become, sort of your identity. Even if it's not what you would say, oh, I believe in this. Your feelings that are driving you to do things that maybe you wouldn't want to do normally, that's going to become your postcard to the world. That's going to be your identity. But if you allow your identity or your purpose or your mission set or what you know, the things like this is either the virtue I have or the character that I have, that I know this is what I need to give to people. So regardless of how I'm feeling, I'm choosing this first. And I'm ignoring these emotions. Not that they aren't real, like they're real things. And we've got kids, man. Like we get that. Like having kids, you appreciate as a dad, I think on a whole new level in the life stuff that goes through and develops that. But like when you can appreciate that self regulation isn't just saying that, oh, those emotions don't exist, but being able to go, that's not the most important thing right now because I have this thing I need to get done. And I think as a dad, that hits me a lot, man, because I could be feeling a certain way as a dad when I'm doing things with my little girls. But I have to sort of rise above those internal feelings that are real and go, I'm their father. What they need to get from me right now is this. So my identity better be driving my actions. And that actually can shape the way that we're all feeling about this. But if I let Josh's feelings drive this, I might be an asshole. And that's not who I need to be for my little girl right now, man. So I just think it's powerful to say it's really good to look at emotions in a healthy light and say they're there, they're real, we all got them. They might be valid to feel them, but they aren't valid things that should be driving all of your decisions. That's just very foolish and immature, I think. And I think through a lot of hard training that you and I have both been through, you get to experience and see that firsthand in the worst of humanity, to be honest, whether it be combat deployments, going through really tough things like sniper course, certain courses we've been through. I think that exposure and experience to watching how people are going through some lousy stuff because you're all in it together. But you really watch the people that you respect, and someone might be like, man, that's a really resilient guy. A lot of those people, when you strip it down, they are coming across as resilient because they're actually regulating a lot of the same emotions that you haven't reeled in yet. So their resilience is an ability to just manage what's on the inside better than you can. So they look more resilient because they're handling their shit a little bit better than you are because
Yeah,
everybody's got it. So
100%.
that's the framework I heard from you, man. That's a really good way to posture it up because it's true. We all have those thoughts and feelings, I think. It's what is driving your action? Is it that stuff or is it your purpose? Is it your identity? Is it who you want to be known for and known as? That should probably be the driving factor in my opinion.
100%.
Yeah, that's awesome. So this is a good question because I think you and I have a lot of similarities in this, man. Talking about emotions we do have. I, especially as a kid, I was known for like being a spitfire at times. So this next question from one of our listeners says, when you feel yourself getting fired up inside, what are some ways that you can center yourself? So how does Matt do this?
Oof. I mean, honestly, dang camera. I thought I had a better answer than this, but then as I kind of went through that last one, I honestly want to say like basically kind of the same thing. Like I have really learned, or I guess just come to understanding that like it's not that big a deal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, um, like I'm trying not to freak out about this camera right now, right? But I'm like, yeah, like
What
you're
a
like,
fitting thing to
you're
happen on
like,
this
yeah,
episode.
yeah, you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, I can still hear you. That's what's more important. I'm like, yeah, okay, fair. Um, but yeah, so like, I mean, because there are times, much less frequent now, where like I'll go off the rails.
Mm-hmm.
And usually, and my wife hates this about me because this is one thing that I have always been good at, not on purpose. I can go off the rails and we could be at our throats for like 30 minutes over whatever the argument's about.
Mm-hmm.
15 minutes later, it's like, hey, am I still cooking dinner for both of us or am I just cooking dinner for myself? And she's like, you act like we didn't just argue for 30 minutes straight at the top of our lungs. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm cooking for just myself then? Like I get over things really, really quick. Um,
Hmm.
or like, go to bed angry. I wake up in the morning and like, like it's like it never happened.
Right.
I don't know like how to tell people to like get better at this. I think it's just again with some of the things that happened in my life when I was younger. I've gotten very good at just like moving on.
Right.
Because again, like I said, shit's gonna happen. It's not the end of the world. I mean, I know
Right.
sometimes a lot of shitty things will happen back to back to back. But just like you were saying, like how you handle it is what's more important than like how you let it affect you as opposed to how it affects you. I think those are two very different things, even though they sound very similar.
Right.
Um, so like if I start to get really irritated with something, I will usually, if I have to, in a military context, a work capacity, if I have to address it, like I'm going to address it. I'm just going to do my best not to yell. Like I
Hmm.
will speak very, very direct and very, very to the point, and I will try to use as little words as possible. But
Right.
if I continue to use more words, I'm basically just I'm lighting that fire more and more and more.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm just like get to the point, say what needs to be said, and then shut up in color.
Yep.
Um, if it's something that's not as big of an issue, um, I try to look at it from a lot now. Where like again, as depending on where you are in your life, whether it's we're talking not work capacity or work capacity, like I use a lot of work scenarios because like right now I have a lot of staff sergeants, and every day I make the joke of man, I fucking hate staff sergeants. I hate them. They're so dumb. And people are always like, dang, what the heck? And it's like, well, they are like, they don't know what they don't know. And I know that because I used to be one and I didn't know what I
Right.
didn't know. So like sometimes I'll try to be like, okay, like, should I be mad right now? Or should I decide like, did he even know how to do that task?
Right.
Um, did I give him enough information to complete the task? Like, did I do all the things I should have done to make sure that he knew what to do? Or did I have I presented myself in a manner where he's comfortable or she's comfortable coming to me and saying, I don't know how to do this, I need help?
Right.
Because I'm sure at some point they were like, man, I wish I had more information. But if they didn't feel comfortable to ask me, like I failed them first. And that will usually tone me down real quick.
Yeah.
Now, because
And
it's like,
man, your ability to know that it's really important because for those that aren't military that might hear this, so like a transition from a sergeant to staff sergeant, you become from a non-commissioned officer to staff non-commissioned officer. Organizationally, it's like you're stepping across a little bit of a divide of being more like a hands-on practitioner, really being like highly respected, sort of like the top dog as a sergeant. Like that's really important.
yeah,
And now you're stepping into a new peer group, if you will, like more of stepping into that senior enlisted type role where you take some more staff responsibilities, more big picture ownership, and whatever your occupation is, it's sort of the same of that is a difficult leap for people because where they're really comfortable and good, hopefully, um, you get hit with a lot of things that you've never been exposed to that level before. And it's
it's
like
almost
that
like
in
going all the way back to the bottom of a new barrel.
it is. You are at the bottom of a new totem pole. Like you aren't. It's almost like you're not even in the same universe anymore. And I remember that for myself when I made that jump into having thrown on a rocker, and I was like, you bring a lot of goodness with you, but you're promoted for your potential of what you can do. So when you step into that new group, you're like, oh man, like I'm Nick the new guy.
Yeah.
Ooh, and I think it's your ability as a leader this is sort of agnostic of any occupation, but like your ability to be emotionally intelligent of what other people might be going through because you've been through the similar thing and help them navigate how to regulate their own stuff. Like because you have had to do that. That's so important, man. Because if we were all just winging it and no one had been there before, so I wouldn't say that. I talked with this last week with my buddy when we did an episode on honesty, and he was like, I don't like people just throwing out the word mentor like they're everybody's mentor because you can't tell someone I'm your mentor. That's sort of you self-select who you want to mentor you. But
Yeah.
there are in organizations, you can be a lifeboard for someone, or like a little swim floaty for someone who's like drowning in this sea of like randomly new stuff I've never been in before, man. And you can be that safety line that goes like, hey, I'm not going to tell you how to do things. I'm not going to try to act like I'm your mentor and be something you don't want me to be for you. But I can be a lifeboard that you're not swimming really good in these waters, man. They're uncharted to you and you suck at swimming anyway. So let me help you float for a minute because I know what this feels like. And I've actually had to regulate my own emotions in this really new radical thing that you're experiencing. And you said something earlier, man, that really stuck with me when you were talking about how when you were struggling for the very first time, when you were going through sniper course as a student, and you said it was maybe the first time that you really struggled to regulate your emotions and to reel yourself in. And it wasn't because it was mentally hard. It was because you were out of control because you sucked on the UKD and you're like, and there were things that I just wasn't performing how I always had performed before. And I think there's certain points in someone's life where people go like, "Oh, you've changed. What's happened to you?" And I think when you step back with experience and go like, maybe this person has been really good at everything their whole life. And in a desire to challenge themselves and step up to the plate and try hard new things, they are finally actually being challenged
Yeah.
and stressed and pressed. And now you get to see the true colors of what it's like for them to struggle. So, like, a good leader doesn't hate on those people or be like, you suck. Like, you find a way to help them navigate that and go, like, man, you're really good at a lot. This is a new area where you're not so good yet. Let's appreciate what this is. It's not that you're a bad person or you've lost your trajectory. It's just, this is new to you, man. Like, and I know what that's like. So I think a good leader steps in with some emotional intelligence and some good leadership empathy that goes, I'm still going to hold you to the standard, but I know this is hard for you. Cause like listening to like the younger Matt as an NCO, that's like, dude, I sucked. And that was the first time I couldn't get a hold of my stuff. I couldn't regulate like what was going on because I had lost control. So like when someone feels totally comfortable and in control, it's easier, I think, to self-regulate or to control your emotions or control your impulses. But when you feel like you are losing control and you aren't as good as you maybe should be, that's a real litmus test of like, how good are you at actually letting your identity drive you? Or how much are you going to let these really lousy feelings drive what you do and who you are? And that's hard, man. So like young staff NCOs, you're spot on as a master. I'm going like, oh, they suck. They do because it's new to them. And I think the humility of that as a staff sergeant to go, not go like, oh, I'm senior to a sergeant, so I should be better than I was before, and realize like I'm in a new swim lane now, man. Like this is hard. And then seeking out advice and input from the Mats of the world, they can go like, yo, dude, let me help you out. I know what you're feeling. I've been there. It's really important. I think the place that a really good, thoughtful leader has in helping other people navigate what those emotions look like, whether that comes from being a parent, a boss, a mentor, whatever. Like there's such an important role, I think, in that chain of relationships that I'm sure you've seen it a lot as an instructor as well with
Yeah.
just young dudes who might be a good young Marine man, but you put them in the stress test and they look like they're about to explode.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Oh
dude,
yeah. Which I
what is
mean, that's what it's designed to do.
exactly. And I think that is how you build resilience is teaching people to when they feel out of control, you can still manage this. You'll be okay.
I think just to that point, not to you know trail too far off topic. The
Nah, keep
big
going. This
the
is
big
good.
thing about that, which again it took me a while to learn, um, is not only someone being willing to put themselves in a scenario like that for growth, but
Mm-hmm.
as the mentor or the lifeboard or the instructor or whoever you want to call you or what you want to input there as like the person is what you do after that. Like if I
Mm-hmm.
put you in a scenario like where I expect you to fail. I don't want you to fail, but I'm expecting you to fail because you're super outside of your comfort zone.
Right.
Or, like, what am I going to do after that to not allow you to go through that again? I
Mm-hmm.
think in our circle or culture, just inside of the Marine Corps, because not all the Marine Corps is like this, especially during the time frame that we grew up in it, that was probably one of the most lacking features is
Man,
like
you're
you
striking
would
a nerve with people on this one. I promise you.
oh yeah, like And I mean, and I said, like, I was the same way. And again, it could
Right.
be because you don't know what you don't know. So it's like, hey, I taught, like we talked about earlier, like I taught you the words that were on the screen,
Right.
and now you can't perform. And
Hmm.
sometimes it's an ego hit, right? It's like me as the instructor, I'm like, well, I taught you all the things and I taught you correctly. So you must be stupid because I did it right. And you should be able to perform this. That guy did it. Why can't you do it?
Right. Right.
But again, like it's also one of those like, well, okay, well, why? And when I was younger, I definitely didn't ask a whole lot of why. I was just like, I'll tell you the same exact thing I already told you. And you should, maybe it'll click this time, right? Like I didn't know what was wrong. So I just cycled the bolt and did shot the same shot in the same spot and got the same result. Couldn't figure out why.
Same
Um,
miss.
yep. Probably went to the same spot that I couldn't see. Um, but as I've gotten older, like I started to understand like same thing, like, and I do it almost daily now with my staff sergeant, my sergeant. It's like, hey, I need this to get done. Like these are the things I need done, by this time. And they're like, okay. And they're like, is there a specific way it needs to be done? I was like, no, it needs to be done. And I'll give them some time. And then maybe like an hour later, I'll come over like, hey, where are we at with this? And they're like, oh, they give me whatever kind of explanation. And I'm like, all right, well, here, let me show you some stuff. Cause like at that point, like if they're not like, oh, I've already done this and they spin the computer screen around and show me, like I know they probably haven't even started. That's why he's stumbling over his words because
A lot of
he's
blank
telling me what
screens
he
and confusion.
yeah, he's
Yeah.
telling me what he thinks I want to hear because he hasn't found somebody else that could show him how to do it.
Right.
And then I'll show him how to do it. Or like, if they complete it, I'm like, all right, hey man, you got the task done. This really sucks. Come sit down. Like I'm going to show you exactly like what needs to happen and why. Because maybe this is the regular, like this is the way it has to be done because that's the process. Or like you
Hmm.
have some wiggle room here. Or like you were just way off the ballpark on this part. Like this is what it needs to look like.
Right.
Um, but being able to add the growth part on the back end
Hmm.
is what's super important. Because like I said, there was a lot of times where I think I've been super fortunate in my career where I've had a lot of struggles. I put myself in a lot of struggles, but I always had someone to be like, "You suck, you idiot! Now come over here and let me show you how to do it, knucklehead." And then like they showed me, "Oh,
Right.
this is what right looks like." They didn't want to give me the answer up front because then I wouldn't learn it. I would just copy and paste it and then pull it when I need
Right.
it to copy and paste. I think that's a key thing there that like, again, I think the older Marine Corps, and I don't, whether it's wartime, we didn't, turnaround times, deployment times, all the things that were happening, we didn't have as much time. But like now, we're not in war, much longer dwell times between deployments. Like you
Hmm.
could really get into showing the dude why and like going through the whole process of like, hey, let me
Right.
give you the task, let you trip a little bit. Okay, now let me show you how to tie your shoes. Okay, now let you go a little bit further, trip again. Okay, well, you got to tie the other shoe too, dummy. And
Yep.
like work your way through the pieces so they really understand it. Um, and they understand the why and the growth happens. Like I said, I think
Hmm.
we, as an organization, we have definitely got much more better at that
Yeah.
since I've been in. And again, I
Right.
think it could just be we can call it wartime, peacetime. We can just call it like, just the education of the Marine Corps as a whole, like the way it used to be taught. And, now we're doing adult learning methods, whatever
Sure.
you want to call them. We've gotten
Yeah.
better at all that stuff over time
Hmm.
as people started to figure it out. Like I said, I think
Right.
I was just fortunate as a young dude that I had those random little unicorns that just always happened to be somewhere close to me that could be like, here's a buoy, stop drowning, come over here.
Yeah. But man, I think it's really important. You nailed it. And this does go into the question was like, hey, when you get fired up, how do you center yourself? Or like, how are you going to find that balance or regulate? And when you get fired up over something, it's really interesting to walk that back. Maybe you can't do it in the moment. I think through practice, you can get better at understanding, okay, this is something that's like firing me up. What's the source of this? Why am I responding or reacting this way before I take action or speak on it? Right. That's having that filter and having that lens is really important to be able to know this is like an internal combustion engine on the inside, but maybe I shouldn't be exploding in the moment. That's hard. And I think maturity is someone who can take that internal explosion, calm it down a little bit, take some breaths and go like, all right, let me think before I, you know, either talk or pull a trigger or whatever. So I think there's so much that goes into that, but that does come from experience of having that experience with failure and coming out on the other side of that and having someone who can walk you through that, be honest with you. I think it's really cool how the last virtue that we walked through with this series was honesty. And some of those discussions I had with the guests, my sister, and then my buddy that we talked on it after that was like, hey, in this moment, like, how is my voice and the things I'm bringing to the table or my actions, how are they improving the silence and the stillness of what's happening? Right. So, like, if there's an empty void, do I need to speak right now? Is it improving the silence if my voice enters this space? Or are my actions improving things? So I think as a leader, it's a really important question to ask yourself. Like, I need to be honest here, but how am I helping develop this situation positively? So when you're regulating yourself, when you're regulating other people or helping them figure out what it's like to struggle with that failure for the first time, or they're getting really pissed off that they're not performing well, or uncontrollable variables they're injecting because it's life and it really riles them up or it riles you or your team up. How can you be that source of maybe some levity and adding some lightheartedness to it, a source of being even keeled and balanced? Um, that's a difficult posture to have sometimes, especially when you're feeling some of that anger and frustration as well. But I think it is just a sign of maturity to go, all right, I need to find ways how to balance this out. And you nailed it. I think learning how to manage failure and difficulties is really important. And when you realize that that's a really good experience to fall back on, like, I've been here before and I came out the other side okay, that helps you realize that even though I'm out of control, it's probably going to be fine. Even in like life and death situations, combat deployments we've been in, like, maybe it won't be, maybe I'll die, who knows? But like, there are certain things I can't control, but I can control like a thoughtful, deliberate action based on what my mission or my purpose is right now, and that's what I need to do. That's the only thing I can control, so I got this. And when you can, you nailed some like adult learning, all these things. There's a term in learning and development is sort of coined by the Bjorks. They were like developmental psychologists, but it's called desirable difficulties. And they did a lot of research on it. And basically it's like, hey, at what percentage would you want to like allow people to be successful or fail, right? So like you want difficulties, but not to the point where it just completely obliterates someone to where they can't be successful. But there is in a learning or development or coaching or teaching or cadre mindset, like, I actually want to present you problems that you can't solve. And not everything needs to be something you can't learn from. I need to give you some traction, but like, I want you to struggle. I want you to like get some water up your nose and feel like you're going to drown for a minute to appreciate the need for good swimming technique. Like, for you to get better in this thing, I need you to feel the struggle. For Matt to be better as a sniper and then now be where you're at in your career trajectory, you needed to experience that failure on the UKD to then come back and circle around with that dude from 4th Recon where you could teach each other tips, because without the failure, you wouldn't have paid so close attention to the things you needed to do correctly. So like, you hit those moments where you go like, I can't just wing it right now. I actually need to show up with some talent, with some experience, with having learned from a failure. And I think, man, that the fact that you frame it that way is really important to me, because that failure and that difficulty and a repetition of a life of being cool with failure and actually knowing that I need to make my team better, I need to facilitate levels of failure in a desirable level of difficulty that they can't overcome maybe by themselves, that forces them to regulate themselves when they feel out of control and when they feel like they suck, because that's life. That's real. And I think it's a really important thing to highlight. If you're setting up something that everyone does really good at on paper, our day jobs are, when the rubber meets the road, when the grind of our real mission set hits, you're confronted with people that are trying to kill you. So that's that's the real litmus test, is like, how successful are you when people are trying to gun for you and take your life? And how well is your team gonna respond, flex, come up with new creative ways to solve a problem? It can't be just a copy paste, because this new situation, it might not work. So how have I developed them to push through a failure, control their emotions, and win whatever that fight is that's facing them? That can be on the battlefield, that can be in a corporate setting, that can just be in life and parenting, whatever, dude. Like, there's
Yeah.
tough shit. it is going to be so hard that if you don't know what it's like to push through a hard thing of failure, you can't regulate. You're going to crumble. You're going to crack. Um, so I think that framework it's everything. That's this sort of leads into this next one. This next question is really good, and I think we could go a lot of ways with it. But the question says, could you share some of the best ways in your experience to help cultivate emotional intelligence and introspection or self awareness in kids? Let's just say, like in younger people in general, and maybe share a time when you've seen these affect self regulation or a lack of self regulation. So, yeah, like in younger people and kids, how can you help cultivate that emotional intelligence, awareness, things of that nature?
So I would honestly say I feel like it kind of goes along with the lines of a lot of stuff we've kind of already been talking about, some of the examples we've
Hmm.
been using. Um, Especially I would say in today's world, because I say kids. I mean, I got a 7-year-old, I got a 15-year-old.
Yeah,
I work with a lot of 18 to 25-year-olds.
sure.
Um, the way we grew up, you were probably the same way. We were outside a lot because, like we didn't have this thing right here where I could do whatever I wanted from here
Right,
24/7. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, download a video game and play a video game on my phone.
right.
I can live my entire life in my hands as long as I got a charger within, 6 feet. Um, so like they just don't know how to work for stuff as hard. And I don't say that in like a negative way because I mean, I'm sure they do. It's just in a different way where like
Sure.
a lot of kids, like they don't have a lot of life experience as far as like outside, where like we are talking about like
Hmm.
the struggle or, you know, not being able to just Google the answer. Because I mean, I'll use that.
Oh,
I'll use my 15-year-old because my 15-year-old, she actually surprises me a lot. She will ask me some questions about like homework. And it's funny because my response would be like, why don't you just Google it? And she's like, well, Google's just going to tell me the answer. You're gonna make me figure it out. So I'd rather ask you because then I'm actually going to learn it. And I was like, all right, who's the parent here? What the heck just happened? Um,
that's
where I,
awesome.
where I, yeah, right. I'm like, I'm not expecting that. Where I see a lot of times now, where like with the instant answer, the instant gratification, like they almost don't know, like they don't have the tools, the mental tools of like, how do I even go about figuring this out on my own? So like
Right.
going back to like we were saying, like introducing struggle, whether it be, just basic math problems or like, like an assignment or, a task at
Hmm.
work where they may not know how to do it. They only know like this is the thing that I want done at the end of however you figure this out. And allowing them to be able to struggle through it, but not just letting them, like I said, just not letting them struggle the whole time. So like, I'll use my 15-year-old as an example because going back to her as an example, because like I said, she obviously tried to parent me at one point, and I don't even think that was the intent. But like, it'll be like a word. Her kryptonite is word problems, like math word
Hmm.
problems. She
Yeah.
hates them. She's like, just put the numbers in front of me, and like, I don't know. She like the answer is just kind of like formulate. She's like
Right.
just one of those weirdos that like she could just do the thing. But you put it in a word problem, where it's like Johnny has a basket of 3 apples and 7 oranges, and then you take away two
Hmm.
Oreos. How many apples and oranges does he have now? And she's like, I don't get it. And I'm like, well, obviously 3 and 7 because they took Oreos. But she can't envision that.
Right.
So like being able to ask the question and then, provide the guidance along the way because it's, not just giving the answer. I think that's one of the biggest things to like develop that kind of stuff is like continue to give them little nuggets of information and help along the way.
Right.
Because at
Yep.
some point it might just click and they just needed a little bit more than what was
Hmm.
presented at face value. Um, Sorry, I'm really trying not to throw this $2,000 camera at the wall right now. But yeah,
Speaking
and
of
being
self
able to,
regulation,
yeah, and being able to do that process, dude. Now it's back on its own mind game again. Being able
it
to do
sure
that
is.
process where it's like continue to develop and support and help whatever that particular thing is that is causing the struggle.
Mhm.
Because it doesn't just apply to the scenario that you're in, right? Like when I'm using that word math problem as an example, that might be the immediate thing that I'm helping and fixing and solving.
Right.
But now, you do that 2 or 3 times, and then when she gets to the next thing in life, whether it's like trying to get ready to go to school or, whatever, cheer practice or a competition, she now has a set of tools. And I hate using that term because it's like Marine Corpsism, but she has a set of tools
Yeah.
that she can draw from and be like, can she apply this same problem solving process to that new scenario? And maybe she
Right.
can, maybe she can't, maybe she can only use a couple of them. But then she starts to develop her own ability to do it. Like, she was super frustrated about this math problem because it doesn't make sense to her and she hates it. Now
Mhm.
she gets in a scenario, or maybe she's trying to figure out how to do this, whatever, this pyramid with her cheer team and her portion of the team, and she's trying to figure out how to, like, she knows how to do it, but they don't know how to do it, and she's trying to figure out how to explain to them, like, if you do it
Right.
this way, then that way, to add support here, put hand here, place foot here, distribute weight here. And now all of a sudden we have 4 people as a base, and we have one flyer up while we're supporting ankles and feet, and she can balance and she can do her whatever routine while we're
Mhm.
holding her. She's able to do, kind of, intertwine those skill sets, or that
Right.
those problem solving skills. And I think that helps develop all of that stuff. Because I mean, in a way, like, I think of it as problem solving, but really it is like emotional intelligence. Because usually when you don't understand something, you get frustrated, you get angry, you kind of
Mhm.
shut down and just
Right.
kind of like, I don't want to deal with it. But
Yeah.
now it just gives you the ability to, as you do it more and more and more, because maybe originally it's like, I read the problem, I hate it, I'm done,
Right.
emotionally done. Like,
Yep.
I give up. And then the next time I take one attempt at it, then I give up. And the next
Right.
time, 2 attempts, and then 3 attempts, and then 4 attempts, until like, oh, I figured out how to solve it. And it's just like with everything else we've kind of been talking about, like, it just takes repetition. But if you don't have any understanding of like how to solve the problem,
Mhm.
um, you're never going to get to the end state, or to the goal,
Right.
or to the answer.
Yeah.
Um,
Man,
that's
that's so good too
kind of how
about
I figure it out, I guess.
that's a great example. It's I'll respond on this as well because I think it's you sparked some things in my mind. I was already thinking about this, but just looking at math problems, my oldest little girl is really, really smart at certain things, and then again struggles with certain other facets of it. Sometimes it's in math, like she'll enjoy doing the same type of problem in one way than yeah, if you give her a word picture and just different ways of learning. And I think it's healthy to appreciate that people are different in a really good way. So what works for you as a dad or as a leader or as a teacher may not work for that person you're trying to teach. And understanding and appreciating that takes some emotional intelligence on your part. So I think to first say the best way to help cultivate emotional intelligence and introspective self-awareness in a kid or in anyone else, you have to even know what those words mean to and for yourself,
Agreed.
because you are not cultivating or teaching anything that you don't even understand. I'm sorry, you're not. Like maybe those kids are learning things from you on how to not be, but they aren't making the connecting file in their own mind if you aren't helping them from a some level of understanding. I'm not saying you've mastered it, but being aware of what this even means. I'll throw this up when I edit this and post it. There's I mean that is one of the things I help people through. I'm certified and a certified practitioner of emotional quotient inventory, so emotional intelligence like metrics. And there is, I'll just say, I'll put this up there. There's a way that it starts on the inside and it works its way out. I'll share this if you want to hear more about it. Reach out to me and I can deep dive this with you all day long. You can look at, I'll give you good resources for those listening. I don't want to make this like some behavioral science lecture, but just the reality of it is it starts on the inside. So what you see on the outside matters because that's what you're marketing and that's your sales pitch for who you are to people. So perceptions are reality. Impressions really do matter. I think it matters how you package yourself and what you're offering to the world. It's really important. Be authentic, be you, but be thoughtful with it. But it starts on the inside, man. And it's when I did my ruck and posted that earlier in the week, and I showed a picture of my ruck and the accountability, the honesty of showing up, sure. But when I posted that short reel, and I was like, as I'm exploring this with Matt, and you and I have both been through like lots of rucks. You talked about your 12 miler where you just had to buckle down and do it. 3 miles in, you were feeling like crap. All right, cool. I'm going to push. But not only can I honestly judge someone by looking at the way their ruck looks from the outside, are straps everywhere? Is their weight off center? Are they wearing the heavier weight at the bottom of the ruck because they're a rookie and they don't know what they're doing, and that's going to hurt their lower back later? So like heavy weight isn't like center spine and high on their, like almost at their shoulders. So like all these things that we know through their experience. And then someone new who's like, oh, rucking is the new hotness. So I'm going to go do a ruck run so I can be cool like an operator. Like, and that's like a new thing now, I guess. Okay, great. But like, if you don't know what you're doing, I can make a quick judgment call. But if I unpack that ruck, or if I'm looking at like what's on the inside and connect that to like your performance, it's just a really quick analogy and visual to me of like how people are. Like I can look at the outside of you and maybe make some quick judgment calls. Maybe they're not all spot on, but I can probably get a gauge for what you're trying to show me by from the clothes you're wearing to the way you're talking to the way you're behaving. I can see outside externally who you are, and I can make a snap judgment because we all do. That's a partial information. But if I really started diving deep into, especially like with my children, like you just said, like, hey, what's the real why behind this? What's the driving factor behind her hitting this learning barrier, or her getting super frustrated in the middle of homework and coming to me asking me for help? And I've gone through that with my little girl too, man. And it's happened very similar to you, but I'm going to flip it in a different way, because my first real experience with watching my oldest daughter have almost like her mat on the UKD range. I watched my daughter for the first time that I visibly saw her struggle with something, because she's really intelligent, has a really strong will, and she was young, so she hadn't really experienced anything too tough yet. And we had her in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. She had struggled in some of the things, like during some of the training sessions or whatever, but it wasn't like a competition. So like she'd get frustrated, but it was just a drill, then you'd be done. But it was a couple winters ago. I put her in like this holiday sort of like, jingle bell rock and roll, like it's like a holiday type jiu-jitsu tournament a couple hours away from where we live. And I went, I did it with her, like did it in my own weight class. And then it was my first, because I hadn't been in jiu-jitsu long. So it was my first competition. And then she went, and there wasn't a lot of kids. And the first couple kids, like she was pretty good. She sort of mopped them up pretty quick and easy. And then just because of the age range, they didn't have a whole lot of kids that showed up for her to keep going. They paired her up with someone it was a boy who was much bigger, a couple years older. And at that age range, to the belt thing was like not too much of a big deal. So he had been doing jiu-jitsu quite a few years more than her. And it was like her first year ever doing it. So he was way better than her. And she's a strong kid, but he dominated her immediately, slammed her to the mat, took her arm, and was basically all but suffocating her with her own arm. And man, like as a dad on the sideline, first of all, like I didn't react, but I was like, ooh, that she's gonna get it handed to her right now. And the ref was watching it, everything was safe, nothing was out of control. But she felt out of control. And much to like what you were talking earlier about, like when emotions and self-regulation starts going out the window is like when you start losing control in life. Like when you can't be good at the thing and you're getting dominated by whatever it is you think you should be good at. And man, I saw that happen to her because she was coming off of 2 back-to-back wins on the mat and stepped in, and this kid just pummeled her. And she started weeping on the mat, and she was like, but she couldn't even really talk because the kid's smothering her with her own arm. And so then I looked at the ref and I said, I just nodded at him. I said, hey, pay attention, because I could hear her like screaming under her arm. And so the kid, like, she got her mouth out a little bit, wiggled out, and she just screamed. She's like, make it stop. And my daughter's on the mat, bawling, crying, screaming, make it stop. As a dad, that was hard to watch, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I also I knew she wasn't going to physically be hurting, but there was like such a balance there. I said, how do I like let her go through this really tough feeling that she's feeling and learn from it. So he called the match, like it was a submission, got it. So then she came over to the side and she grabbed me, gave me this huge hug, and she said, "I want to go home right now. I don't want to do this anymore." And that was one of the most challenging things I've ever had to navigate with my oldest daughter for the first time, because I knew she wanted to do this tournament. She had already medaled because she had been dominating other kids. She wanted to leave right away. And as a dad, I had to go like, what's the best thing for her where I can appreciate her emotions, appreciate that she can't regulate it right now because she's never felt this way. Like that's got to be scary, being a little girl with a much bigger boy literally smothering you out, going like, dude, I don't have to do this in life. Let's go home. And I said, and everybody's watching her. And it's interesting culturally too. Just like I love Norway, but culturally it's much different the way sometimes they handle kids. So I went out on the mat and I said, hey, come to the side with me. I said, baby, if you need to cry, cry. But I said, I'm not going to talk with you until you can like be coherent. So get out what you need to get out, but it's not going to last forever. And then I need you to dial it down a little bit so we can talk. And she was just like, no, I want to go home. So sort of losing her shit, man, to be honest. And I can't really blame her. But the way that I had to meet that, and I think cultivating it before I could even teach her anything, first of all, I had to be present. And I think you said earlier, like, man, my mom was there for all these practices growing up. I learned so much from her about how to do this. And you tipped your hat to your mom as much as you said you might both have your strong feelings and, but you're like, I'm a lot like her. And I think some of those really good traits that you took away from your mom on how to, whether it's compartmentalize or regulate your emotions or push through hard things because you know your family needs it. And you might not feel like going to all these practices and taking everybody all over the place, but you do it because you know it's best for your son or your daughter. And a parent that might not feel like it but does it anyway is sort of the best example of like the beautiful side of how a child pays attention to that, whether you think they do or not. And you're like, I hope my mom doesn't see this, but I hope your mom does see this so that she can see like whoever she is and wherever she is. I hope she does see this one day to get that tip of the hat to like the hard work that as a parent now, I appreciate what my parents went through to be there for me for things when they were. And so for my girl, I was like, it's not all about the life lesson right now. She just needs dad to hug her and let her cry. Let her get it out. Like uncork that emotion for a second. That's fine. But then I need to help her land this and figure out what's up. So I said, hey, that boy's strong. He was better than you. I said, and I know this is hard to hear, but you didn't do good that match. I said, I'm proud of you because you did your best, but it wasn't good enough to win. I said, and that is going to happen so much. And thankfully, I had just had a match as well while she was doing like her second match. I had one. And I got my ass handed to me by this dude. He was a beast, and he was much better than me. I like hadn't practiced and trained much, and I just went to do it. And he dominated me. And I told her that. I said, Daddy just got absolutely annihilated on the mat, baby. And she said, you're so strong. I said, yeah, but this is a very specific thing. This isn't like no rules fight, go just like try to kill the guy. This is a very specific talent that your dad isn't that good at yet. I said, so that guy was better than me and better trained, and he dominated me. I said, and that's real. It just happened to me too. And she looked at me and she goes, how are you so calm then, Dad? And it was like almost like this, like you said, your daughter like teaching you things. And I was like, that's a great question. And I'm glad she asked that because I got to sort of walk her through it. I said, well, on the inside, I was actually really pissed off that I lost. I said, but I'm older than you, so I hope I know how to control my feelings more than at the time she was like 6, I think. I said, more than a 6-year-old. I said, sweetie, you just went through a really hard thing where it felt your bodily reaction as someone is trying to keep me from breathing and they are on top of me. They're going to hurt me. I said, that's a natural reaction. I said, so you're not wrong for feeling that and reacting. But I said, I want you to know you're safe. And I want you to know I'm proud of you. And you will only get better the more you can learn to push through things when you feel like you can't control them. I said, so what did you learn from that? And she said, well, she went on a bunch of different tangents. And I said, no. From the skills that your coach, Coach Yvonne, had taught you, what did you not do that maybe you could have done? Like, what's something you learned and took away from that match? And she gave me one, like, oh, I had him in the mount and then I allowed him to shift this way or something. So I didn't like trap his leg. And I was like really shocked at the answer she gave. I was like, that's really good. So she had thought through it. So I pulled her out of the emotions back to reality and said, where's something where you could have gotten better? Let's just tackle this realistically. And I said, awesome. I said, okay, you have one more match. And after that match, you're going to get a medal. I said, so I'm not telling you what to do. And I'm not going to make you fight in a match that you don't want to. Daddy's not going to force you to do that. It's just a thing. I said, but I think it would really be good for you to do this next match because you realize you're not going to die. Daddy's right here with you. And that next little kid that you're fighting, he's the first kid that you already fought. So this is sort of like your medal match. And I said, and you annihilated him. So I said, take this aggression that you're feeling and these emotions, bring them inside and look at this kid. And it's okay to say, like, I'm going to demolish you now. I said, so use that fuel and that energy to just crush this next thing you need to do. And dude, she like had him in an armbar in less than 30 seconds.
Yes.
But it was, it's, that's more of like a story narrative response to this question from me. But that was a really hard thing as a dad, to be honest. Even for me, I didn't know what to do in that moment because I was like, my daughter's crying. She feels all a wreck. This is a dad. My heart goes out to it. So I just had to be there and be present. I had to be really patient with the stuff she was feeling, but I had to be the mature person there that goes like, we've got to push past this emotion and continue to live and continue to do a thing. So what does that look like for my little girl? And I wanted her to feel like she had some buy-in to the choice. I didn't want to be like a hard ass and like, you're going to fight. I don't care about your feelings. No, that's not what we do. We're Moranos. We win. Like that's not what my girl needs. Like come on.
Yeah.
So that's not a way that I should lead my family. Appreciate what she's feeling and try to help her work through the other side of it in a healthy way. And man, she learned so much from that. And I think behaviorally, I've seen it with my other two little girls. Emotions that it's like just trying to teach them that they're okay to feel them, but you don't always have to voice every emotion you're feeling to people because people might not want to be around you. So like with kids, with young Marines, they're not kids, but they're young Marines. And I think from a maturity standpoint in an organization, if you're new to something, you don't know what you don't know, being a young Marine infantry guy or girl or whatever your occupation is, it's hard because you're stepping into a new space where you're not experienced yet. So your whole life could have been successful. And now you're in a new group, a new clan, a new gang. And it's like, man, I don't even know what I don't know here. So like you're going to have to push through it. And I think to teach them how to be emotionally intelligent, how to be self-aware of what they're going through, and how they can actually navigate that by just putting their head down and accomplishing the mission and bringing people around them that have been there before that can help them through it, that actually care about their success. I think that's a really important thing to realize that we all go through that. And I would say for those listening, like for Matt and for me, we are equally, regardless of, being over 40 and creeping on 40 for him, we're both looking at that retirement stage in the Marine Corps. You're creeping up on your 20 and I'm at 23 plus, and I'll be retiring from the position I'm in now within the next few years. And that can be a daunting thing. That is something we haven't experienced before. There's a lot of emotions and feelings that go into that. There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of feeling out of control, a lot of going like, okay, what's this next chapter going to look like as a husband and a dad and whatever, business ventures I'm in. We're trying to set up for that now, but there is a lot that Josh at north of 40 sometimes probably feels very similar to Arya at 6 years old on that grappling mat. Like, I'm about to get smothered by this thing, and I don't know how it's going to turn out. But I think through life, through having like trusted people around you, through being honest with those things that you're going through, but being aware enough to realize that they don't have to control and dictate your every action. You can make healthy choices outside of that space. And the way that you present yourself matters. And the people that you do that with and your team, like your tight circle around you matters, man. Like the people you're stepping into your business venture with, whether it's Phil and, like that, those guys matter because you trust them. So you wouldn't want to just be doing that with any chump, right? So it's like, then you get that sort of maturity and that decision making that goes like, yeah, this is going to suck a little bit, but like, I know some keys to success about who I want around me, how I want to be doing this, what's driving me, what my what my purpose is at this part of my life, how I want to be known. Like those things should be driving your actions more than those feelings. So that's a great question though, man. Cause like kids feeling stuff for the first time, I think probably teaches me more than it teaches them sometimes on how to regulate
Agreed.
my own emotions and show up.
Agreed.
I don't know.
Yeah,
So I don't
I
know.
think
I don't know
there's
your
a
thoughts on that, but that's where it went for me.
yeah. Honestly, like I think it was there's a great caveat. I think is the word I'm looking for to like my example or how I interpreted it because
Hmm.
it's two very different scenarios.
Right.
Like one was like a mental scenario of a
Right.
knowledge problem as opposed to a physical scenario that has two very different reactions.
Yeah.
So I think, like I said, it's good to kind of with the question the way it was asked, like understanding the scenario and the human being that is in the scenario is what really kind of dictates how you would foster that emotional intelligence. Because like
Right.
I probably could have attempted to handle my scenario with the same reaction that you had, and it probably wouldn't have had the same result because it wasn't
Exactly.
that type of a struggle. Where
Yeah.
like had you kind of went through it the way I did it, probably wouldn't have had the same result. I almost
No.
would guarantee it wouldn't have the same result because it was
No.
a completely different problem. So I
Yep.
think, and to your point, like us, one being dudes growing up and living the lifestyle that we lived, we're like, I never had to deal with stuff like that before. You know, like number
Right.
one, I'm like, it's a girl. Like, how do I don't know. How, girls feel all weird and icky. I don't know how to do that. And trying to be able to, understand that and see that other side, and then how to process it.
Man,
Where I
it's the
think with
age
you,
old Darla and Alfalfa from Little
yeah,
Rascals. It's like I know I
yeah,
want to hang out with you, but I don't even know what to do with you right now.
yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think it's just one of those again because had it been 22-year-old Matt in that scenario, probably would have handled it all kinds of wrong.
Right.
As opposed to, 37-year-old Matt. If I was like using your scenario, probably would have, I don't know, obviously probably wouldn't have handled the exact same way because we are different,
Sure.
but it would have
Yep.
been probably more similar
Hmm.
than as opposed to 22-year-old Matt would have been like, maybe you want a straw? So you just like set it the fuck up, get back out there.
Right.
Like, probably would not have been the right answer and would have had a
Right.
whole, he definitely would have been going home because she probably would have just sat down on the floor and been like, I'm not moving. Fuck you. You know,
Not doing
um,
this, Dad.
so I think that was a perfect way to kind of have two different examples where you really have to just understand what's happening and be able to process in the moment as that whether it's a father or senior um marine or the leader in that company
Right.
when that kind of scenario happens, whether it is I'll say the 18, 19-year-old kid as opposed to the
Sure.
15 or 6-year-old kid. um some general things that I think would be that applies just being of like understand the scenario and hopefully you understand enough about the person that's going through that struggle to be able
Hmm.
to try to figure out what's the best way to approach and navigate this to come to
Right.
that solution.
Yeah. And I mean, the question that came from it's also, I think back to the last, when I was going through the last virgin, my sister said something. And I mean, she's just got so much experience. She has great kids, but she has a lot of just really practical insight. And she said that, hey, in our house, when we're going to share something or when we're speaking, and it was honesty. But I think honesty actually is such a tight connection to like emotional intelligence, self-awareness, because like it requires you to be honest with yourself at the core of you. So to really regulate and self-regulate in a healthy way, you have to be honest with like, what am I actually feeling about this and what is actually going on? That's hard.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to develop that in someone, you have to be honest. And her filter of how they do things is really helpful. It's like, first of all, am I being honest? Am I being truthful? Next is what I'm about to say or do. Is it necessary? So like I can say things that are honest, but also like, is it necessary for me to say it right now? And then if it passes through those two filters, the last one is like, is it kind? Am I being a kind person or am I being an asshole? So like it might be honest, it might be necessary, but if I'm not going to do it in a kind way, I should probably check it. So I think that model for me, when I'm trying to cultivate an emotionally intelligent daughter or child, I need to be honest. So I can't hold punches and tell them, like, oh, it's okay that you feel this. Because sometimes those feelings aren't okay. You might be feeling them, and I value that you're sharing them. So thanks for your honesty. But like, let me be honest with you. We don't need that right now. You don't need to be showing that feeling. Like, that's not respectful to your mother to be yelling at her when you're angry. It might be an honest feeling, but it honestly is unacceptable. So like, I can't just allow untethered emotions in my home, or I would have just mayhem everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, for myself and for them. But then, okay, maybe if it is an honest emotion, now is it necessary that I'm showing this or saying this? Cool. And then as a dad, especially with girls, man, like having three little girls in the best of ways has changed me as a man. Um, because it just really, this last one of like, is it kind? Am I appreciating the heart of a little daughter when I say this honest, necessary feedback that she's asking for? Am I doing it with love? Am I doing it graciously? Am I actually doing it with her heart at the center of my heart? Or am I just trying to prove a point and puffing up kid? So I think that's hard for maybe some men, or maybe even like infantry guys or guys that have, had this lifestyle we have, to appreciate at times. But that model, I wouldn't just isolate that to my daughter. I actually view young Marines that way now. Like, I genuinely have a love for them to be better. And that sounds gooey and funny and weird, but it's true, man. Like, when I see young Marines, even if they're just hard asses and like 0331s, tough as nails, like getting guns up and all this stuff, like in, in a very sincere way, like, man, I love those dudes. And I love watching them click and get something. So the way that you develop that young sniper or badass grunt or whatever, like the way you do that, however your personality is, in my mind, like it has to come from a place of kindness, and it has to come from a place of like actually loving that person and being invested in them being successful. And then when you apply your own personality traits and your own style to it, that's what you should do. You got to be authentic with it. Um, so let that be as grisly as it needs to be. But man, you've got to come with just a care for other people if you're going to try and cultivate that in them, I think. And I'll be honest, man, like my daughters have taught me that and made me a better overall man and leader just from being able to be their dad. They have taught me so much more than any other man could have taught me in my life. Because it was a scary experience I had to go through. Like, oh God, how am I going to be a dad to a little girl? And it knocked off, in the best way, it knocked off all the rough edges I think I needed filed down, man. Because it was God, it's a daily
Yeah.
challenge, dude.
Agreed. Agreed. And I only got two.
Yeah, well, my little one she is a spitfire too. Goodness gracious. So thanks for that question. That was a really good one. All right. Last question as we land the plane on this. So if you walked away from this and you said, man, I wish Josh or someone would have asked me this, or this is something that I just like on this topic, maybe I thought of it now, I want to share it. Like, what's sort of your parting shot? Like, how would you respond to that? Or what's something you'd really want to leave people with as they sort of try to apply this in their own lives?
I mean, honestly, question wise, I think those ones were really legit. Like I said, I
Yeah,
mean,
those are good.
I was
Good
like,
job, everybody. Those are fantastic.
when I first saw those, I was like, man, I'm gonna look like a deer in headlights. I'm gonna be smooth
Nah.
brain, don't understand. No idea. Uh, so really, I mean, I don't think there would be another question that I could think of right now, Johnny on the spot.
Mm, yeah.
Maybe if you gave me like a week to figure it out, I could be able to come up with like a half one.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, I think the biggest thing, just I would say as like a parting note, is like understanding that a lot of things take time. Like I said, basically everything that we talked about, each question we hit, each example, like again, a lot of those were us looking back and how we'd handle now compared to the way we handled before. You
Hmm.
understand? You're not always going to get it right. Like we
Hmm.
said, I was like, 22-year-old me. I was like, man, I look back and I'm like, I did some dumb ass shit where I handled some shit in the completely wrong way. At the time, I might have thought it was right or thought I was doing it right. And I probably had some really good reasons as to why I thought that was the way it needed to be handled.
Right.
Um, but I didn't have the intellect or the depth of experiences and knowledge to understand that, like, oh no, like I probably should do it this way. As where 17, 15, 17 years later, where I'm like, okay, like now I have a better way to approach that. Still same
Right.
intent, still same, you know, meaning behind it, but the way I'm delivering the message or the help or the support or the information, like you said, it's much smoother now.
Right.
I've gone through and roughed all that out. It just took, you know, lots of trial and error. So like it's one of those like don't expect to like listen to this or like, oh, here, like, oh, hey, this is how Josh did it, or this is how Matt did it. Tomorrow I can execute it that way perfectly.
Hmm.
It's going to take you attempting to do it and probably messing it up
Right.
at least once. If you can do it
Yeah.
within two times, like, man, I need to call you and figure out how you do it because
Yeah. Y'all need to be
it,
coaching us.
it took me way more than two times on probably everything.
Yep.
Um, and and I say the very last one is like we said, don't be scared of failure because like
Yeah.
everyone's going to experience that at some point. I
Hmm.
mean, like I said, hopefully sooner rather than later to just get it out of the way and learn from
Yep.
it. Um, but at some point, like, just understand that you will not be 100% all the time.
Yeah.
It's impossible. And if anyone has done it, I'm going to argue it was a fluke and they got lucky.
Yeah, man. That's so true. That's great because creating space for yourself and for other people to just have time to develop and learn things and just it does take time. Like this is a lot of years, especially maybe the military examples or stories we shared. Like that's between the two of us, that's 43 plus years of military experience and a lot of deployments and a lot of tough things and a lot of rough life. Like you having a brother who was deaf, you losing your dad. I lost my dad to suicide. And the last time I had ever talked to him was from the side of a mountain in Afghanistan in '08. And then 2 year gap of not speaking. And then I get news that he's gone. Right. So it's like there's a lot of tough things people are going through in life. And that's why I say just like showing up to be, hold them to a standard wherever you're at in life. That's fine. Standards are good. Like you should rise above emotions, but to regulate those emotions for yourself and for other people, like just appreciate the humanity of who we are. Like everyone is, I think everyone genuinely in a certain way is trying their best. If they're still alive and breathing, most people are trying their best at least one thing in their life. They're trying really hard. So be gracious in that. Like find something instead of nitpicking things in other people. Find something to like honor another person in and to call out that's like a strength of theirs and say like, hey, yeah, I know you're struggling, but I want to say like you're really good at this. I'm glad that you showed up and put a uniform on today and showed up to work because you're a grown person. You didn't have to. Right. So there's always little things that you can try and like lift those spirits or lift those emotions out of the nastiness that they're in. And for me, I think just with emotions, the idea, and this is where I'll probably land my plane for me, is like the idea of just like a rucksack that I throw on because I just did it and it was like it was a painful, sub hour 10K that I pushed through, man. And like I was crushing it. But it's interesting, like the time that it took for me to perform at a good level for that ruck. First of all, like my warm up, getting my body feeling like that took time. And then I always do this if I'm doing a ruck where I'm trying to go like for like a good metric or a good output, or I want to see like how good can I do. I always do like a fast paced walk for like 15 minutes first to like sort of feel how I'm feeling about it. And also to just feel how the load is feeling on me. Cause although I have packed rucks for creeping on 25 years and I know how to do it really well. And so do you. And I know the science behind what needs to go where for weights and how I need that to sit on me. I still want to be moving at a little bit faster of a pace just to like feel and make sure like how is this sitting with me before I really go out to perform? So again, that takes time and it takes time to get warmed up into it. It takes time under a little bit of a load, so under some pressure before I can actually expect to perform really well. And on the inside of that, I'll just leave everybody with this picture for emotions. The things that I have to load up my ruck with to make it like 20 kilograms or like 45 pounds, right? Like if I have this many things to put in to make this much weight, that's what I have. Whether it be a combination of, weight here, the ruck frame, how I have things cinched down, tightened down. that can either be a pretty comfortable experience or it can be incredibly painful based on how I load that out. And that is, for me, it's a really good picture about emotions. Again, like I could go into this whole emotional quotient inventory and the science behind it, but like basically who you are as a person, you can work on things, but to a certain extent, you get what you get and you don't pitch a fit because you get the emotional capacity that you have been gifted with. You get the weight, you get the loadout that you have as a person. How you balance and organize that and how you balance and regulate and complement those emotions within yourself inside can either make your experience of that ruck of life like a little bit easier or it can make it really lumpy and awkward and difficult. So like it's not always about even like you need more of this emotion or you need less of like it's more about an even balance, I think, as a person. That is sort of that regulation is finding like what complements other things that I'm good at and how can I dial that in? And that's where being quick to take some good feedback from other people, like Matt's saying, like you got to give some tough love sometimes, but it's not like I'm going to get any more or less weight in my pack. Like what I've been given, and I'm like, hey, this is your stuff. This is your toolkit. I love that. This is your toolkit for the mission set. Go. How you load that out is up to you, but I need you to go. That's life sometimes. These emotions you have inside of you, that's what you got, and you got to go. But how you balance that internally can make it smoother sailing or it can make it really uncomfortable. So, yeah, man, this has been, I feel like we could go on and on forever. I really do, but this has been fantastic, man.
Yeah.
It's so good. And for my girls, I always end this way, but for Laura and Aria and Alessia and Karina, if you listen to this one day, I hope you appreciate this is always for you, but I hope you also appreciate that your dad has had such a cool opportunity to meet some badass people in life. And I think one of those guys is this guy that you're listening to with me right now, Matt. So from another strong man who has daughters, who is just genuinely gifted at helping other people be better in life. I'm so glad that you guys, the listeners, could dial in for this. I hope this has helped encourage you that like we all go through our stuff, man. But it's important how we approach that. It's important the people you have around you to help you through that. And I can't think of a better dude than Matt. So Matt, cheers to you, man. I am so glad that you joined me for this. So proud of you and everything you're doing. And you're in your glide path down to retirement now, man, in about a year. And that's exciting times for you. So before we dial off, tell the people how they can follow along with what you're doing. Because I want to give you a plug for what you're doing too. So give them a reminder and I'll tag them in this as well. So what are some ways they can keep up with you?
Well, first, thank you for letting me come on and give me the invite.
Yeah,
Like I
buddy.
said, it was great to catch up. I'm surprised we went 2.5 hours. I was not expecting that. Super
Yeah,
wild.
buddy. Yep.
But honestly, just to get a hold of me, Instagram, matt.solo006. I know, super unique. Or you can hit up the Cadre Training. That's our the new company that we're running. I don't really do the Facebook that much. I kind of have it for some private
Yeah.
groups.
Yep.
But I'm on there, but I don't really check it. And I mean, really, that's the main one. I have a YouTube channel. I honestly can't. It's like Matt Solowynsky, like 5762. I'm not sure on the numbers, but I'm sure
I
if
think
you
it's all
type in
linked through your Instagram though, right?
it should, yeah, it's linked in my Instagram. So if you go in there and hit the little link tree thing, it'll pull up. Again, it's majority of it is all, precision rifle training and little tips and tricks and stuff like that. So, and again, if you obviously have any questions, you can always hit me up because unfortunately with my job, my phone is never more than, you know, one arm's distance away, like my rifle used to be.
Yeah,
Um,
man.
so, I will definitely respond and, answer any questions or, hit you back with whatever it is you're looking for, if I can. If I'm not, I'm sure I could find someone that knows what
Yeah.
knows what you need. But
The
other than
man's
that,
got
again,
connections.
yeah. But other than that, man, again, appreciate it, and it was super awesome catching up with you. It's been
You too,
far
man.
too long.
Proud of you, buddy. Good job. All right. Have a good weekend. Get after it. Go regulate yourself. See y'all soon. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Off the Hinges. Don't forget to follow Foundational Coaching on your favorite social media platforms. Kick off your Saturday with me tomorrow morning at Coffee and Reflections on Substack, where I'll share my reflections and stories on the weekly virtue. I'm honored to be a part of your story today, and I'm proud of your growth, my friend. I can't wait for our next time together, exploring the vault.